Hey, what's up guys, it's your boy KCM What Ifs. Today we are gonna be reading The Turn of a Hero, or What If Naruto Left Jiraiya and Betrayed Konoha. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Tap. We just think that this whole thing could have been avoided if you had just simply listened to us. Tap. And now, because of your undying trust in the boy, this has happened. Tap. Would you stop doing that? Tsunade stopped tapping on her desk with her finger when she saw that the conversation had stopped. Is that all? She asked with a bored tone. Both Hamura and Koharu flushed in anger, but Danzo stepped up. You can't just simply ignore this, Tsunade, he began. This is a serious matter. That boy needs to be captured and brought back here immediately, he finished. But then he smiled. Of course, if you can't do that, then I suppose a new Hokage should just step up and handle this matter accordingly. Tsunade internally scowled at that. I know what needs to be done, she said with a frown. Danzo was silent for a few moments before slightly nodding. I hope you do. And there's one last matter I would like to talk to you about. And that is? Asked Tsunade. The Nanabi Jinchuriki, he answered. I hope you now see that training her is a good option now. The boy had spent the little time he was back with only her. It wouldn't surprise me if they're working together. Tsunade raised her hand. Personal life has nothing to do with this. Besides, they were just friends at the most. Is that why she's still staying in the boy's apartment? Said Danzo incredulously. I find it really hard to believe that people who are just friends would do that. Tsunade smiled. But of course you would. After all, friendships and relationships of the sort aren't your strong point after all. Danzo couldn't keep the frown from appearing. It still begs the point that nothing will be done about Fu, interrupted Tsunade. That is final. At least have Ibiki and began Hamura. I said it's final, interrupted Tsunade. Now, if you could please leave my office so I can find a way to deal with this, I would appreciate it. Danzo had a disapproving look on his face but didn't say anything, instead opting to leave Tsunade's office. Tsunade sighed as the last of the elders left and the door closed. They do have a point, thought Tsunade, although not too happy at that thought. Still, could Naruto and Fu be more than just friends? If I have Inoichi go through her memories, I don't know what kind of effect that's going to have on her. Not to mention the fact that she's a Jinchuriki as well. If the bijou somehow got out because of this. Tsunade rubbed her forehead. This really is a mess. The window opening to her right caused her to sigh. About time you got here. Jiraiya was merely silent as he stepped in the office. So, is it true? He asked quietly. Tsunade nodded. Yes. Naruto left, but this time he made it perfectly clear that it was intentional and hostile. Jiraiya sighed sadly. That doesn't surprise me that much. I guess it's obvious that he somehow knows about what happened with the Uzumaki clan. Yes, agreed Tsunade before leaning back on her chair with a sigh. I don't know what to do anymore, she muttered. There's other problems, began Jiraiya. Oh fucking great, said Tsunade. What is it now? It's not much, he continued, but there have been significant fights all over the land of fire. It seems someone is taking care of Akatsuki. What? Exclaimed Tsunade as she looked at him. What do you mean someone is taking care of Akatsuki? Jiraiya shrugged. The details are sketchy, but it seems that recently a lot members have died. I don't know anything else. Hell, no one does. Do you think Naruto is tied to this? Asked Tsunade. Jiraiya sighed. I don't know Haim, but it wouldn't surprise me. There is one thing I forgot to tell you, began Tsunade. And that is? Asked Jiraiya. Tsunade sighed. Kushina is alive. Silence. And then more silence. Until. Ha ha ha. Good one Tsunade, said Jiraiya as he chuckled without any real humor but then saw Tsunade's serious face. You're serious? Do you think I would be joking about something like this? She asked. But she died along with Minato that night, exclaimed Jiraiya. I don't know, responded Tsunade but then muttered, maybe it has something to do with those eyes. But Jiraiya caught it. Wait, what eyes? He asked. Tsunade looked at him with a raised eyebrow. You mean I didn't tell you? Jiraiya shook his head, making Tsunade sigh. Alright. Well, according to Guy's report, Naruto's eyes were different. They were gray with a ringed pattern. Wait, interrupted Jiraiya with wide eyes. Are you sure about this report? Tsunade nodded. Yes. Sakura and the others said the same thing too, and that Naruto managed to somehow use some invisible force which pushed them back with great force. Jiraiya slumped down. That can only be the Rinnegan. The Rinnegan, repeated Tsunade with disbelief. You mean the same one that the Rikudo Sennin was said to possess? That's just a myth. It's not, interrupted Jiraiya, there was one student of mine that possessed it, he said remembering the trio of aim. But he died. But how could Naruto have them? Asked Tsunade. I don't know, answered Jiraiya but then remembered about the prophecy that he was told. Naruto, you can't possibly be. Tsunade slumped back down again. Well, we just have more questions than answers now. Jiraiya had to agree to that. There's also some news that I was on my way to tell you when you called me, he added. More? Said Tsunade with a tired sigh. This is actually some good news for a change, he replied. And what is that? Asked Tsunade. I've finally found where Akatsuki's base is. More silence again. And there was more. And more. And then. What? Screamed Tsunade as she stood up. Do you know what this means? Jiraiya held up his hand, stopping the excited woman in her tracks. Now hold up, Haim. Don't tell me to hold up, snapped back Tsunade. With this we can finally launch a counterstrike and finish that organization once and for all. Really? Said Jiraiya sarcastically. Have you forgotten the old saying knowledge is power? What's that got to do with this? Asked Tsunade. It has everything to do with this, replied Jiraiya. If we march in there without knowing a single thing we are doomed to failure. Realization hit Tsunade. Please don't tell me you're thinking what I think you're thinking. I don't know about that, said Jiraiya with a chuckle as he glanced at her chest. Be serious about this, said Tsunade with a twitching eyebrow. Alright, replied Jiraiya as he held his hands up. The best way is for me to go in there and scout. Then we'll know what we're dealing with and be better prepared. You're not going in there alone, replied Tsunade with narrowed eyes. I'll have some Umbu accompany you. No, said Jiraiya as he shook his head. Umbu would just slow me down. Besides, the more people there are the higher the chance of being caught. I'm the only one who can do this. Jiraiya, I'm not backing down on this, replied Jiraiya as he made his way to the window in which he came in. It's about time I do something right with my life, he thought. And what about Naruto? Asked Tsunade. I don't know what to do about him anymore. You'll figure it out, answered Jiraiya without turning around. I have faith in you. He jumped out. Tsunade sighed as she closed her eyes and sat back down. The only thing I got is Fu. But how should I proceed with this? A knock on the door prevented her from dwelling on it any longer. Come in, she said, trying to keep the irritation in check. The door opened, and Shizune walked in with 3 people behind her. Tsunade raised an eyebrow when she who it was. Kazekage Dano, well, this is a surprise. Gaara nodded his head and bowed. Yes, but there is something that I must really speak to you about, Hokage Dano, he said. In private, he further added. Tsunade nodded. I see, Shizune, if you please. Kankuro, Temari, said Gaara quietly. The three nodded before walking out and closing the door. Now, began Tsunade as she folded her hands on her desk. What is it that you wish to discuss? You know there's something that's been bugging me. Naruto raised an eyebrow at what Kushina had just said. The two were currently curled up in the king-size bed with Kushina running her hands up and down Naruto's chest. Mikoto had left about an hour before, saying she needed fresh air. What is that? Asked Naruto. Well, began Kushina, I don't know if I'm overthinking this or not, but I remember Obito saying that Madara didn't possess his Rinnegan at the end of his life. At Naruto's nod, she continued. Well, what happened to it? Before Naruto could respond, someone else did. He gave it away, answered Mikoto as she walked into the room, fully clothed, and sat down in one of the chairs that was in the room. He gave it away, repeated Kushina, confused. To whom? And why would he do that? The whole part is easy, responded Mikoto. It's an orphan boy from AIM who is from the Uzumaki clan. He is now Pain and the supposed leader of Akatsuki. Interesting, said Naruto. And here I thought I was the last one. Kushina shook her head. No. A few did make it out, and they probably married and had children with other people. Mikoto then continued where she had left off. Now as to the why. That's something that I don't know. Madara was a very secretive person. Just like Mito, thought Naruto. I'm sure Black Zetsu knows, commented Kushina. Why haven't you and Obito simply forced him to tell you? Mikoto sighed. For one, it doesn't really make much difference to me. But the other is that bastard is immune to genjutsu. Seriously? Asked Naruto. How? Mikoto shrugged. I'm suspecting that's how Madara made him to be. Hell, I've even threatened to kill him but he shakes it off. I even tried to seduce him once. She admitted with a blush. Kushina laughed. And how did that go? Mikoto turned her head with a huff. The bastard is gay. Was her response, which made Kushina just laugh more. Finally someone agrees with me. You just think that just because he's basically a clone of Madara, replied Naruto with a roll of his eyes. Exactly. That's a good enough reason, isn't it? Right. Then they heard a beeping sound. Mikoto took out a small disc and smirked and turned to the two. I suggest you two get dressed. The fun is about to begin. The two Uzumaki nodded and got up, with Naruto looking for his pants, again. Seriously, why do they disappear all the time? Kushina walked up to the closet located on the far side of the room, and opened it. She grinned at what she saw. Mikoto walked up next to her and chuckled. I take it you like it, said Mikoto, amused. Kushina nodded and grabbed what was her new shinobi gear. It consisted of a pair of really short ninja shorts, gloves for each hand, black ninja sandals, and a tight black and orange jacket. As she got dressed, she saw something else that made her stop. Is that? She asked Mikoto, who nodded. Yes. Your old sword. I couldn't leave it in Konoha, now could I? Kushina grabbed it and inspected it, giving it some test swings. I don't know what to say. Mikoto shrugged. Don't say anything. Consider this a sorry for not doing much for your son. Kushina nodded her head. After Naruto and Kushina finished dressing, the two proceeded to make their way out of the inn, and to AIM, to finish Akatsuki and once and for all. Are you sure about this? Anko nodded her head. Currently, we find Anko and Fu in an underground room, provided by Anko herself. When Fu had asked what this room was used for, Anko merely grinned and answered with a, let's just say this is where all the really naughty boys go to and never get out from. That was enough for Fu to not ask about it again. You're going to be put under suspicion, Fu. You were the only brat really hung out with when he was here. Well, in public at least. Even though Tsunade doesn't want to believe that you're helping Naruto, she's going to be put under a lot of pressure. I mean, he did kill a future clan head, said Anko. Fu had to admit that what Anko said was right. But that didn't mean she liked it. But I really don't want to forget what happened. Anko sighed. I get how you feel, but it's necessary. You get busted, hell, everyone here gets busted. And you may never see Naruto again. You want that? Fu shook her head, causing Anko to smile. Good, now we need to do this quickly. Who knows how long it's going to before Tsunade sends for you. But, you've done this before, right? Asked Fu meekly. Anko grinned. Of course. When you're in the interrogation department as long as I have, you learn a thing or two. Now hold still. Anko placed her left hand on Fu's head and concentrated. Footsteps could be heard as well as the opening and closing of the door that leads to the room. What are you doing here? Asked Anko as she concentrated. I just wanted to see this, answered Niji as he looked on. Are you sure this is going to work? Of course, I think. She didn't get to finish as she was blown back. Niji took a step back as red chakra surrounded Fu. Anko shook her head from her spot on the ground. What the hell, she said. Niji merely narrowed his eyes. What are you doing? Protecting you, that's what. Fu stepped back as Chomei snarled the answer. But I allowed them to. This is necessary for allowing Naruto to succeed. Chomei shook his head. Perhaps, but my way is better. And what way is that? Asked Fu with disbelief. Chomei snarled again. You should be grateful that I'm even offering my assistance in the first place, you insolent human. Knowing that it would end badly if she angered the bijou any further, Fu sighed. I'm sorry. I just don't want Naruto to fail because of me. Chomei was silent for a few moments, before answering. In that case, you should just hear me out first before jumping into conclusions. Fu rubbed the back of her head. Sorry. It's just that you and I have never really had a relationship. Chomei nodded. Indeed, but enough of that. Just tell that woman that if anyone tries to come into your mind and try to find anything, I'll simply blast them out. Can you do that? Asked Fu. Chomei nodded again. Yes. Your seal is not strong enough to prevent me from doing that. And even if it was, since we're in agreement here, I think you would allow me to. It was Fu's turn to nod. I see. Thank you. Chomei shook his head. Don't let it go to your head. I'm only doing this for my own benefit. Now go. Niji and Anko sighed in relief as the red chakra disappeared. We're so lucky this room has seals for this type of crap, commented Anko as Fu's eyes opened. What happened? Asked Niji. Fu smiled. It's just that we don't have to worry about anyone trying to get into my head now. And why is that? Asked Anko with a raised eyebrow. Nanabai said that he would just do what he did and forcefully kick them out if anyone tries. I see. Muttered Anko. Doesn't Konoha have seals that prevent Jinchurikis from using a bijou's chakra? Asked Niji to Anko. No, well yes, answered Anko. That was helpful, said Niji with a sweat drop. Anko scratched the back of her head sheepishly before turning serious. The only one with that skill level would be Jiraiya, and unless he took part. But if he did, would this still work? Asked Niji. I don't know, said Anko as she scratched her head. It would prevent Fu from using the Nanabai's chakra out here, true, but I don't know if that would work while inside her mind as well. It won't, said Chomei from within Fu's mind, causing said girl to look around confused. What? She said out loud, making Niji and Anko look at her confused. Chomei sighed. It's me from within you. And don't say anything out loud. Just think about it, and I can hear you. Like this? Yes. Now tell that woman, that no, in your mind, my chakra would still force them out. Fu nodded and focused on Niji and Anko who were looking at her strangely. Sorry. I was just speaking with Nanabai, she explained to them. Ah, said Anko, nodding her head, so what did he have to say about this? That he would still be able to force anyone out if they came to my mind, she answered. That's convenient then, commented Niji. Well, that takes care of that then, said Anko. The only thing would be if you're interrogated by Ibiki. She stopped and paled. Oh crap. What? Asked Fu. Anko looked at her seriously. How good are you from resisting torture? Fu didn't like the sound of that. I don't know. I've never been officially tortured before. You think Tsunade would go that far? Asked Niji. Anko sighed. I really don't know. But we should be prepared for anything. She then smirked. I'm going to enjoy this. Fu shrank back at Anko's smirk. What? She said. Anko's smirk just got wider as she approached the frightened girl. Niji's sweat dropped when Anko laughed evilly. You've chosen a weird ally, Naruto. One day later. So this is aim, it's wet. Both Kushina and Mikoto rolled their eyes at Naruto's comment about aim. The trio were currently walking down a street in the middle level of the village. Yes, it's wet. What gave you that idea? Said Mikoto sarcastically as the rain poured all around. Naruto only shrugged. I call them as I see them. Now, I'm going to guess that they're sealing the bijus in the highest tower in the village, am I right? Now that caused Mikoto to blink in surprise. Actually, yes. How did you know that? Naruto shrugged again. It was just a guess based on the guidelines of every villain in the world. And that is? Asked Kushina, amused. Why, to always have the biggest building and conduct all your evil schemes in there, he answered in all honesty, causing both women to sigh. Is Obito going to be joining us? Asked Naruto. He was supposed to be here now, said Mikoto with a thoughtful look on her face. Maybe he's having problems finding Sasuke. All bets are placed. Come and see, the one and only, the amazing Obito. Sasuke, Suigetsu, and Karen's sweat dropped as Obito was on stage with another civilian man, sitting down and drinking sake one shot after the other. There was a crowd around the stage and around them as well, screaming and cheering. How long has he been doing this for? Asked Karen, shaking her head. Suigetsu shook his head as well. Your family is weird, Sasuke. Sasuke could only nod his head in agreement to what Suigetsu had said. In any case, we might have to do this on our own, finished Mikoto. What are the chances of them knowing that we're here? Asked Naruto, causing both Mikoto and Kushina to shrug. Within the biggest building of AIM, the extraction was indeed taking place. The one being sealed at the moment was the Nibi. Be laid in one of the corners, still unconscious due to a suppressing seal. The only ones present however were Tobi, Pain in his Tendo body, and Black Zetsu. Conan was arranging the final preparations for the two new bodies that were to replace the two paths that Obito had taken down. Pain opened his eyes, causing Tobi to turn to him. What is it? We have company, he answered. So they're here, thought Black Zetsu. Tobi narrowed his eyes. Who is it? I don't know, answered Pain, but they all have high chakra levels, in particular two of them. Who could that be? Thought Tobi. Conan then appeared on sheets of paper. Pain, the bodies have been prepared. They are now ready for use. Pain nodded. I see. Good job, Conan. Conan didn't respond. She merely went to take her spot, when Tobi stopped her. Conan, he began, causing said woman to turn to him. I have a job for you. And that is? She asked. There's some intruders that need to be taken care of, he answered as his Sharingan glowed in the darkness. Naruto, Kushina, and Mikoto walked at a moderate pace towards the tower. Why moderate, you may ask? Because they weren't really in any rush. They knew it would take a while for a single bijou to be sealed due to their low numbers, but two of them, So there really wasn't any reason to be in a hurry. The other reason was because the rain had finally ended. It was clear skies for a change. That ended, however, as they turned down an alley. Before them was Konan in her angel form. So they do know we're here, thought Naruto, looking at the only female member of Akatsuki. You're not going through, stated Konan with an emotionless voice. I don't know about that, said Mikoto as she stepped forward. You two can go on ahead, she said to Naruto and Kushina. They nodded before taking off. Konan tried to stop them, but Mikoto was in front of her in an instant, sword in hand, swinging it straight for her head. Konan disappeared completely on paper. Mikoto smirked as noticed a few strands of blue hair on the tip of her sword. Konan reappeared again a few feet away, noticing the hair as well. She's fast, thought Konan. I'm going to have to take caution with that. That jutsu of hers is going to be a problem, thought Mikoto. She brought her hands together and formed seals at an alarming rate. Fire style, Hibashiri. Konan scowled as a ring of fire surrounded the whole area. I see, thought Konan. I'm at a disadvantage in this terrain. She made to fly again to get out, but Mikoto was on top of her first, bringing her sword upon her once again. Konan scowled as she barely managed to dodge again, but at the cost of more strands of hair. It didn't end, however, as Mikoto carried through with her attacks. Konan could feel the heat from the fire ring as she was pushed back. She dispersed into papers again, causing Mikoto to scowl. Kami Bunshin. Mikoto smirked as she was surrendered by dozens of Konans. So she's not running away, is she? Thought Mikoto. Good. That makes things easier. Konan frowned as she felt blood drop down her right cheek from a cut thanks to Mikoto. Fire style, Gokaku. The great fireball burned half of the paper clones in part to the terrain that they found themselves in. The remaining clones then went to Mikoto. Mikoto's eyes widened slightly as she noticed paper bombs attached to them. Crafty bitch. Mikoto launched another great fireball, but some of the clones managed to dodge. Shit. She managed to jump out of the way at the last second but lost the grip on her sword. Mikoto scowled and activated her Sharingan and noticed Konan coming at her with a paper spear. She focused her Sharingan on Konan. This caused Konan to stop and look around, causing Mikoto to smirk. Where am I? Thought Konan, looking around. It was all dark. Wait, Genjutsu. But it was too late. When she came to the real world, she was puking out blood. She looked down and saw the sword sticking through her chest. She turned to see Mikoto's cold Sharingan eyes. This is it for you, Konan. She took the sword out, causing Konan to fall face first on the ground. Pity, thought Mikoto as she looked at Konan's dead body, one of the smart ones, and yet she died meaninglessly. She then turned to the tower. Within the sealing room, things were quiet again except for the sound of the sealing process. But that ended as an explosion from above caught their attention. The ceiling came crashing down. What is this? Said Pain. Naruto and Kushina landed through the newly created hole. Well, hello there, said Naruto with a wave. You, said Toby. What is he of all people doing here? I would have thought that Mikoto or Obito would have come. Pain narrowed his eyes. You have made a terrible mistake, he said. No, said Naruto, you made a mistake in interfering with us. He brought his hands down. Kuchios. A loud roar shook the whole building. Toby took a step back as he gazed at the creature that came out of the smoke. What is this? Thought Toby. Uzumaki. About the time you summoned me. Naruto chuckled from his spot on top of his summon's head. Sorry, Makaryu. But don't worry. Now you can have some fun. Kushina shook her head from her spot next to Naruto. A dragon? Thought Toby. But those annoying creatures have never accepted a summoner since the Rikudo Sennin. You will pay for this, stated Pain as the ceiling stopped and Yujito fell on the ground, barely alive. He brought his hand up but Naruto was quicker. Naruto activated his own Rinnegan, catching both Toby and Pain off guard. Bansho Tenin. What? Thought Pain as he was pulled forward towards the dragon's open wide mouth. No you don't. Shinra Tensei. Naruto cursed as they were pushed back. Hold on, he said to Mukaryu. I know, he screamed back as he flapped his wings. They were pushed all the way through the wall and into the outside. Pain merely gazed as the dragon circled the whole tower. Deal with them, ordered Toby. Pain didn't respond. Instead the rest of the paths came in through the hole that Naruto and Kushina had created, including the newly replaced ones as well. They jumped through the whole building and followed Naruto and the dragon. Toby turned to Black Zetsu, only to find him gone. What? Thought Toby with narrowed eyes. He didn't get to think anything else as Kushina phased right through him and landed on the floor. Toby chuckled as he jumped off the statue and landed in front of her. And here I thought you were dead. I must say it seems that everyone that is supposed to be dead is alive now. Really, that's just annoying. Kushina shrugged. I don't know what to say, really. Do you think you can beat me? Asked Toby. Kushina merely narrowed her eyes and took a stance, taking out her sword. No, thought Kushina, I don't have the speed to counter your jutsu. But I can buy some time. Jiraiya could only stare wide-eyed at what he was seeing. There in front of him was Naruto flying on top of a dragon and fighting 6 people that had the same hair color and the Akatsuki cloak. What's going on? Thought Jiraiya. He shielded his eyes as one of the 6 unknowns came flying straight into a building next to him. I need to get closer. Pain scowled at how the Ninjendo path was crushed, but it didn't matter that much. That path was much better used for interrogation, not combat. He focused his attention on Naruto who was still standing on top of the flying dragon. Rinnegan met Rinnegan. How could you possess these eyes? Asked Pain in his Tendo path. Naruto shrugged. How did you come about yours? He asked back, although knowing the answer already. I awakened them, he answered truthfully, or what he thought was the truth. Naruto raised an eyebrow. So he doesn't know, huh? Oh well, I guess there's nothing to talk about. Mukaryu. Said dragon merely opened his mouth, a large fireball forming. The heat, thought Pain as the Gekido path came in front of them. The dragon launched the fireball and the Gekido path tried to absorb it. Keywords are tried. Tendo's eyes widened as the Gekido path was burned to a crisp. He and the rest jumped out of the way of the still advancing powerful fireball. What? Thought Pain as he and the rest of the paths landed on another rooftop. He should have absorbed that. Naruto smirked at Pain's shocked face. You shouldn't be so surprised, said Naruto, the Rinnegan can only absorb chakra. Mystical beings such as dragons don't have chakra. The Shirato path then launched his missiles at Naruto and Mukaryu, the latter flying around the area in an attempt to dodge them. Kuchios. The Chikashoto path brought her hands down and a giant multi-headed dog appeared and rushed after Naruto. Oi, I want some fun in this too. Naruto couldn't respond to Kurama as the Shirato landed on Mukaryu and engaged Naruto in taijutsu. Get off me, screamed the dragon. Naruto jumped upwards to dodge the metallic tail the mechanized body possessed. In midair he saw the summoned dog heading towards them, causing Naruto to recall the dragon. Now! Shinra Tensei. The dog and the Shirato path were blown back. The Tendo path turned his head just in time to dodge a Rasengan. What now? He thought before his eyes locked with Jiraiya. Jiraiya-sensei. He muttered. Nagato, thought Jiraiya as he gazed at the Tendo path. No, Yahiko. He didn't get to dwell on it as he was forced to dodge a giant bird thanks to the Chikashoto path. Jiraiya jumped on its giant beak to dodge it. Naruto and the now destroyed Shirato path landed on the same rooftop. Naruto scowled as he saw Jiraiya. What is he doing here, he thought. The Tendo, Chikashoto, and the Jigakudo path remained. I can't believe I've lost 3 paths already, thought Pain. Naruto, said Jiraiya. Leave, responded Naruto darkly. This doesn't concern you, Jiraiya scowled. That's where you're wrong. I might not know what you're planning, but I'm bringing you back to Konoha one way or another. Naruto snorted. Really? You too? I would have thought that you would know that is just pointless. Jiraiya didn't respond. He was about to charge when Pain interrupted. As heartwarming as this reunion is, we have business to take care of, he said to Naruto, who had to agree. Bansho Tenin. Both Naruto and Jiraiya were pulled toward the 3 paths as the bird from before made its way to intercept them. Enough of this, thought Naruto as he activated his chakra cloak. 2 wind styles, Rasen Shuriken, formed on each of his shoulders. He threw them both at the 3 remaining paths, Kuchios. Both Jiraiya and the Chikashoto path screamed as they each brought their hands down. A giant panda appeared before the 3 paths. Jiraiya summoned Gamaken to cover himself from the approaching bird. The panda unfortunately was utterly crushed, but it gave the paths time to jump out of the way. Naruto appeared in front of them in an orange spark and crushed the Chikashoto path with a Rasengan. The bird disappeared in a puff of smoke. What power! Thought Jiraiya as he stood upon Gamaken. Fast, thought Pain. Naruto appeared between the last remaining 2 paths, Shinra Tensei. Both paths were blown away. Arms came out from Naruto's back and grabbed them both. He brought them together in front of him. This is it for you, said Naruto. He crushed them both. Jiraiya stood there wide-eyed. He could very well be faster than Minato, he thought. The bodies of the last 2 remaining paths fell to the ground and the chakra cloak disappeared. Then Naruto too disappeared in a black flash. Naruto, said Jiraiya as he jumped from Gamaken and made to follow him. Before that he turned to Gamaken. Tell the Pa and Ma what has happened. Before Gamaken could respond, Jiraiya dispelled him and followed Naruto. Kushina could only scowl. She was sporting multiple cuts and bruises and was kneeling on the floor, panting. You've lasted longer than I thought, said Toby with humor, but unfortunately playtime has come to an end. I agree, said a voice right behind him, making Toby's single eye widened. Naruto brought a Rasengan from above him and smashed it right at Toby's back. Naruto then appeared next to Kushina. I take it you won, stated Kushina. Naruto merely nodded and turned to look as Toby tried to get up. You. He began coughing. This is it for you, Toby, said Naruto. Toby's Manjikyu appeared through the hole in his mask. Do you really think I'm gonna let a brat like you defeat me? Naruto shrugged. You're already done for. Akatsuki is finished and so is your plan. Don't. He didn't get to finish as Mikoto appeared and stabbed him with her sword. You really should be more careful of your surroundings, she stated. She then took her sword out and sliced his head off clean. Man, I've been wanting to do that for years, she exclaimed. Naruto merely turned to the Geto Mazo with a studying gaze. Naruto, said Blonde sighed in irritation as Jiraiya came in through the hole in the wall. He took in the whole situation, which just made him even more confused. What's going on here? He asked. You should have minded your own business, responded Naruto without turning to look at him. He then walked up to the statue and stood at the center, closed his eyes and concentrated. Mikoto and Kushina stood next to each other and blocked Jiraiya's path. Kushina. He began. Save it, interrupted Kushina. I don't want to hear it. Well, continued Mikoto, Sharingan activated, shall we begin? Naruto opened his eyes and all around him were all the bijou except for Chome. Why have you called us here, Kyubi? asked the Yonbi. And why is he here? Further asked the Gobi, pointing at Naruto. I'm Uzumaki Naruto, answered Naruto instead of Kurama. And he's here because he's the very person that the Rikudo Sennin told us would reunite us, added Kurama, causing the other Bijou to look at each other questionably. This boy, thought the Yonbi, looking at Naruto. Please, snorted Shikaku. I just want out of this damn statue so I can kill. The other Bijou sighed at that. I don't know what the Rikudo Sennin intended for all of you, continued Naruto, but I can give you all what you want if you give me something in turn. And what is that? Asked the Sanbai. Naruto smirked. Your chakra. Within the highest level of the tower, harsh breathing could be heard within a single room, everything else silent. Rinnegan eyes shone in the darkness. Nagato took a deep breath and sighed. It wouldn't be long now, he rationalized. It wouldn't be long before he was killed. But it didn't matter to him anymore. Akatsuki was finished and with it his and Yahiko's dream. Now, all he had to do was wait before he too joined Konan and Yahiko. Rain once more poured in the isolated hidden ninja village of Aim. Its citizens were currently running for cover at the sudden start of rain. Usually their leader, Pain, would make the rain stop for a few hours before he started it again. But this time the rain stopped for half an hour at best. What was going on? That was the question that plagued the minds of some. Others, they didn't give a fuck. Currently in the highest tower in the village, clanging sounds could be heard as well as an occasional blur of something or rather someone moving. On a closer inspection, one would notice that there were actually more than one blur. 3 to be exact. Suddenly the blues came to a halt. One stood to one side, and the other two on the other. Once they stopped, one could see who the blurs actually were: 1 male, 2 female. Jiraiya painted from his side of the large dark room, Mikoto and Kushina on the other, although they weren't as winded as Jiraiya appeared to be. He currently sustained many cuts and bruises. His clothes were torn in many places. The 2 women themselves had some cuts, but not as much as Jiraiya. The Geto Mazo stood in the innermost part of this dark room, with Naruto still in the center of it, eyes closed and not moving an inch. Jiraiya narrowed his eyes as he glanced at his godson. What is he doing? He wondered to himself. But then shook his head and refocused his complete attention to the 2 females on the opposite side. They're good. What's this? Said Kushina with a smirk. It seems age is finally catching up to you, Jiraiya, she finished, the smirk still in place. Jiraiya scowled at the comment. It's part of life, he answered. You too would be feeling the effects of it if it weren't for whatever it is you did to yourself to make you still be young. That comment wiped the smirk on Kushina's face. You better watch what you say, she began with a dark undertone, or else I'll rip your whole damn mouth from your face. She then shrugged. You know what, I think I'll do that in any case. It's clear you've been conducting some sort of experiment, replied Jiraiya with narrowed eyes. You don't look any younger than the last time I saw you. I know that you want to take revenge on Konoha, but for you to go as low as Orochimaru. He didn't get to finish as he jumped back, just in time to dodge a swipe from Kushina's sword, thanks to the redhead herself. He frowned as he noticed another cut on his cheek. And here I thought that I dodged it in time. Guess not. Don't you ever dare compare me with that snake, said Kushina darkly. I'm just stating the obvious, said Jiraiya back to her. Mikoto chuckled from her spot. You couldn't be more far from the truth, she commented, humor clearly in her voice. Jiraiya turned to her with a glare. Oh. And I'm supposed to believe you, he said with obvious sarcasm. When you yourself look younger than what you truly are. Mikoto merely shrugged. Call it a woman's secret, she said with a wink. Jiraiya could only once again scowl at that. Enough of this, stated Kushina as she looked at Jiraiya with pure hatred in her eyes. It's time for you to pay, Jiraiya. Jiraiya got into his famous stance. I can understand why you're doing this, Kushina. No, you don't, interrupted Kushina harshly. Can you comprehend the feeling when you find out that the place you call home, the place that you once protected with all your life and were ready to give up your life for, is the same place that didn't lift a finger to help your entire family? She screamed in anger, making Jiraiya flinch. You know what bugs me the most, continued Kushina, is all that crap Konoha teaches about teamwork when they themselves don't follow it. You're all simply hypocrites, she finished darkly, making Jiraiya flinch once more, knowing she was right. Kushina then rushed at Jiraiya, sword ready, intent on killing him. Jiraiya began to sweat in nervousness as Kushina continued her assault, him dodging her attacks, if barely. I can't keep this up, he thought. His eyes widened as he sensed Mikoto coming from behind him. Shit, he thought as he tried to dodge Mikoto but forgot about Kushina. Before he knew it, he was pierced by both Kushina and Mikoto. Are you serious, boy? Asked the Yonbi incredulously as he looked at the young Rinnegan wielder, the rest of the Bijou minus Kurama sharing the same opinion. Shikaku was more vocal though. You're crazy if you think I'm going to hand you my power, you brat, he stated. Now that I'm not sealed into any more of your pathetic kind, I can kill you all by myself. Just as soon as I figure out how to get out of here. He muttered the last part to himself, but the rest caught it. All the Bijou besides Kurama had to agree with Shikaku, except for the killing part. They had no interest in killing anyone unless they had to. I have to agree with Ichibi on this, said the Hachibi, not using Shikaku's real name. Not that said Bijou actually cared. There's no reason for us doing that. Naruto looked around all, noticing that the rest shared the same opinion. And do you have a reason not to? He asked them. Of course we do, answered the Gobi. Your kind has proven time and time again what you will do once you acquire power. Giving you our power will simply result in more problems, continued the Yonbi, and will simply prove once more how corrupt your kind is. I see, said Naruto, pausing for a second. He then continued. You say that, and yet you have helped us in your own free will as well. What are you talking about? Asked Nibi. Naruto turned to the Bijou. Your Jinchuriki, Yujito, you have helped her many times and given you her chakra at any moment's notice. You've even gone as far as to have a good relationship with her. The same could be said about you, he said, turning to the Hachibi, before looking at the rest. It's true when you say that humanity is a corrupted race. Trying to argue that point would simply be stupid. He paused, then continued. And I'm not going to lie to you. What I'm trying to use your power for is not for bringing peace, or stopping a madman from doing something, or anything like that. With your power I myself will bring more hatred and destruction to the world. Then that's more of a reason for us to not give you our chakra, said the Yonbi. Naruto sighed. You're looking at this from the wrong angle, he replied. Why do you care about what happens to humans? We don't, answered the Sanbai. It's you who have dragged us into your chain of hatred and pointless mindset of trying to become the most powerful beings that have ever existed. We are merely victims in this. Naruto nodded. You're absolutely correct, he agreed, and then pointed at himself. I am too a victim in humanity's struggle for power just like yourself. Kurama closed his eyes at that. I'm a human sacrifice, I'm a Jinchuriki, declared Naruto, before smirking. And I'm damn proud of that. Kurama's eyes widened. I don't consider any of you to be a curse, said Naruto as he looked at all the Bijou individually, who themselves were paying attention, even Shikaku. It's the other way around really. I consider you all to be a gift. But of course us humans can't accept something we can't understand. Naruto chuckled with no humor. We all share the same pain here. The pain of being viewed as something that doesn't fit with the rest. And they're absolutely right. We are greater than all of them. We are something that is much more than anything they can ever be. We are the same me, all of you, and the rest of the Jinchurikis themselves. There's no reason for us not to be united. To join and fight back for everything that the rest have done to us. All the pain, suffering, and the loneliness that we have all suffered. I really don't know what the Rikudo Sennin intended for this shinobi world, and I'm not going to pretend that I do either. I merely ask you all to help me fight back, for all of us. Through destruction? Asked the Yonbi. Yes, answered Naruto honestly. I'm human as well, and I'm not going to tell you otherwise that I have my own reasons for doing this, selfish as they may be. But unlike the rest, I'm willing to admit to that. I simply want you to consider what you truly want: be stuck in this thing and be used over again, or to join me and have the thing that you all deserve the most: recognition as individual beings. The Bijou merely glanced at each other, not knowing what to say. The brat has a way with words, thought Kurama as he looked at Naruto's back. You are truly something, boy, finally said the Yonbi. I guess Kyubi might be right about you, after all. Naruto merely nodded. So I take it, you decided then? The Bijou nodded. We will help, they stated at the same time. Naruto could only smirk. Jiraiya could only stare in shock at Kushina's cold eyes. I guess you were underestimating us, huh? Jiraiya, said Kushina mockingly. And it looks like it has cost you your life now. Pity, said Mikoto behind him, Sharingan activated. And here I wanted to have a bit more fun. I guess you just weren't up to it. Oh well. Both women retracted their respective blades, making Jiraiya fall to the ground, puking out blood. Is this it? He thought as his vision began to blur. But his visions cleared as the ground began to shake. Kushina and Mikoto turned to Naruto, who opened his eyes and did hand seals that were all too familiar to Kushina. What is he planning? Thought the redhead. Naruto brought his hands down, Rinnegan activated. Kuchios. From his spot on the cold hard floor, Jiraiya could shudder as a dark aura overtook the whole area. What is this? He thought as something appeared. Is this? Wondered Mikoto to herself. Uzumaki, you summoned me again. I must say, I'm most surprised. I have more people that I wish to be alive again, responded Naruto. People? Repeated the death god. So you want to revive multiple times? And my payment? Naruto shrugged. Take as much as you want from this village. The Shinigami chuckled. I see, and who is it this time then? All the previous Jinchuriki, he answered immediately. What does he think he's doing? Asked Jiraiya to himself as the Shinigami went silent for a couple of seconds. He then spoke again. It is done. Rashi, Han, Utakata, and Yagura shook their heads as they Shinigami once cleared away and looked around in confusion. Where am I? They all wondered. Is that all? Naruto nodded. Yes. The Shinigami chuckled once more before disappearing. Naruto turned to the statue and made a hand sign. What is this? Asked Kushina as she came to a stop next to him. You'll see, was the response she received. Naruto turned to the recently revived Jinchuriki. You must be all confused, but everything will be answered within time. But now, I have a gift for you all. Despite his confusion, Yagura stepped forward. And what is that? Naruto smirked. You'll see. Just stand still. Naruto turned to Geto Mazo and closed his eyes. The statue opened its mouth, and red beams of chakra shot out of its mouth and headed towards the Jinchuriki. What is this? Thought Yagura as he held his right hand up. Oi, what are you doing to us? Asked Utakata with a glare. But Naruto didn't respond. Utakata was about to charge at the blonde and demand, but Hand held his right arm in front of the rouged ninja to stop him. What are you doing? Asked Utakata. I suggest you calm down and be patient, answered the Iwa shinobi softly. Rashi merely glanced at him. Utakata grunted but didn't say or do anything else. A few minutes later the red beams stopped and Naruto opened his eyes. That was tiresome. It was your first time doing something like that, commented Kurama. Now will you tell us what you did? Asked Yagura, before his eyes widened. Long time no see, Yagura. Isabu? The Sanbai, or now name Isabu, nodded within Yagura's mind. Indeed. But how? I suggest you ask the young boy over there. Yagura turned to Naruto with a shocked look on his face, who in turn smirked again. I see. Muttered Han. Gobi, heh, so it's you, huh? Said Yudakata. I suppose we're back to where we once were, replied the Rokubi. Never thought I would talk to you again, Yanbi, thought Rashi. Feeling is mutual, said the Yanbi, but I guess fate had different plans. Mikoto walked up to B and removed the suppression seal. A second later, B was up, looking around frantically. Where are they, those fools, them fools? Dead, answered Mikoto, who then walked up to Yujito, whose wounds were already healed. She smirked and then kicked her in the ribs. Yujito stood up with a pained look on her face. She looked around and saw Mikoto's smirking face, making her scowl. Why the hell did you do that? She asked. Mikoto shrugged. Because I felt like it. What did you do? Whispered Kushina into Naruto's right ear. I returned all the bijou to their respective host, he answered. Yagura heard him, and became even more shocked. Hold on, he said, catching everyone's attention. Just what exactly is going on here? I want you all to join me, answered Naruto as he looked at all the Jinchuriki. Join you in what? Asked Yudakata with a raised eyebrow. In our revenge, replied Naruto. What's that supposed to mean? Asked Rashi. Jiraiya's consciousness once again began to darken before he pushed it back. No, he thought, determined, I know I'm probably going to die here, but I'll at least know something before I do. Naruto caught sight of Jiraiya and smirked before turning to the rest. I think every one of you should know what I'm talking about. After all, we're all Jinchuriki here. Well, all but 2 of us. And, said Yudakata. Naruto sighed. Don't try to play it off. You all should know what it means when you carry the title of Jinchuriki with you. We do, agreed Yagura, but what does that have to do with this? It's got everything to do with this, replied Naruto. We're all the outcasts from all the hidden villages. All the sacrifices for the greater good, said Naruto sarcastically. We were all merely tools that were meant to be disposed of when our usefulness came to an end. But now... Naruto's hands clenched, now all of that has changed. We now have the chance to prove what we are truly capable of, to show everyone else what a mistake they have made. You're getting the wrong idea, interrupted B with a serious tone. You should be proud that you're a Jinchuriki in the first place. That you. I am proud to be one, interrupted Naruto. But that doesn't change the fact that we were all treated unfairly. Treated as trash for something that none of us had a choice in. I would think that's a bit unfair, wouldn't you? The others could only nod, even B and Yujito. But what exactly are you driving at with this? Asked Rashi. Naruto sighed. Don't you get it? We all deserve something better. And if we can't have it by choice, we'll simply take it. Freedom. Muttered Yagura, remembering his childhood. Always being kept in a specified location, never being allowed to be with other children his age, always training. B himself couldn't help but to think of the past as well as his trapped existence. The others also began to think of their own experiences. Take it, I got lucky as being a Jinchuriki, thought Yujito somberly. And it's all thanks to B. Although I do wonder how it was before, she wondered to herself and glanced at B, who had a downcast look on his face. You kitten. But you should be thankful that you didn't experience any of that. You're right. What exactly are you proposing? Asked Han softly, making Rashi surprised. Never had he known Han ask anyone questions except to the Tsuchikage. That old fool, thought Rashi in anger, remembering the old shinobi. All he really cares for is the bijou. Not us. All the more reason to agree. I'm proposing a better future for all of us, answered Naruto to Han's question. And to take out anyone who tries to stop us. Isn't Konoha your target in the first place? Asked Yujito. Naruto nodded. Yes. That is the first place that will go. Konoha is definitely the place that will try to stop us. To try to make us their weapons for their own benefit. But not unless we strike first. Han stepped up. I'm in, he said simply, making Rashi even more surprised. Rashi then sighed. It's not like I have anything to return to, he thought before he stood next to Han. I'm in too. Utakata closed his eyes and then opened them. He walked forward and stood next to Han and Rashi. I'm also in. But not because I care about Konoha, or any place else. I simply want freedom. Yagura sighed as he walked forward as well and looked at Naruto. I may have been a Kage in the past, but I'm not stupid enough to realize that was simply a means to control me. All I want in my life is to be free and nothing else. So I too will join, but just to simply be free, nothing more. Naruto nodded before turning to the last two. Yujito glanced at B, who had a troubled look on his face. What should I do? She asked herself. The answer is obvious, kitten. You've never been seen as yourself, just simply as the other Jinchuriki. I know you've always resented that. I also know that you wonder how things would have been if B hadn't been there. You want to join him? Thought Yujito incredulously. Yes. He is the person we bijou have waited for. What's that supposed to mean? Oh. Why don't you find out for yourself? Yujito sighed but couldn't help herself as she too stepped forward. I suppose I'm in too, she said quietly. B. Do you want to go? Yes. I see. Then B stepped forward as well. What are you? B internally smirked. We're a team, you and me. I can tell you that you really want this, and who am I to deny you that? Besides, this keeps me out of the village some more. There's a chance that Kumo would try to stop this. No. Big bro ain't like that. I know it. Naruto nodded. Good. So from now on we will be. He glanced at the dead body of Toby, or more specifically the cloak. Red Dawn, huh? Perfect. We will be the new Akatsuki. The others merely nodded. Good. Now rest here for a while before we move. The rest made their ways toward the statue, the only place one could find some kind of place to rest in the otherwise barren room. That was unexpected, said Kushina quietly. Mikoto nodded in agreement. Yes, she agreed. Where exactly are you going with this? Naruto shrugged. This is all for taking down Konoha. We now have more than enough allies. We are ready. Not to mention the fact that I now have the chakra of all the bijou. It's perfect. He then turned to the near-dead Jiraiya, who was now lying in a pool of blood. Naruto walked up to him, Kushina and Mikoto right behind him. Naruto knelt down in front of him. I guess this is it, Jiraiya, muttered Naruto, but Jiraiya heard him. Naruto, said Jiraiya, barely. Don't do it. Naruto chuckled and shook his head. Sorry. But it's too late. There is no going back now. Naruto brought out one of his kunai, and then stabbed Jiraiya in the heart. Goodbye, old sensei. In the land of the toads, Mount Mayaboku, a great commotion had just started a few minutes ago. Toads were currently scrambling about, doing one thing or the other. They did share one thing in common, however. And that was the shocked and pained look on their faces. This was the scene that Shima, one of the elder sage toads, came to as she arrived after having gone to find the things that she needed to prepare for tonight's dinner. And things were the right word. Not one recognizable object could be seen sticking out of the basket. But enough of that. What is all this commotion about? She screamed. One of the younger toads stopped to explain. There's been a great incident, Shima-sama. Shima raised an eyebrow. And that is? Jiraiya-chan has died. The basket on Shima's grasp fell. What did you say? She asked quietly. The young toad could only nod. It's true. Fukasaku-sama is currently. He didn't get to finish, however, as Shima merely pushed him out of the way and headed to where she knew her husband would be at. As she reached the entrance to where the great toad sage resided. You old coot, she screamed. Fukasaku turned to see his approaching wife. So you're here? He muttered. Is it true? Asked Shima. Fukasaku could only nod. Shima looked down as tears began to fall. Fukasaku sighed when he saw that. Now is not the time for that. We need to inform Konoha of this. Then what are you doing at this old geezer's place then? Asked Shima as she wiped the tears that did fall. We need to figure out exactly what happened, answered Fukasaku, remembering what Gamaken had told him. Shima nodded and the two walked inside. Nagato opened his eyes as Naruto walked into the room. So you're here. Naruto raised an eyebrow. So you were expecting me, huh? Nagato nodded. Yes. Why didn't you try to run away? Asked Naruto. Nagato shook his head. Because that would be pointless. I have already been defeated. There is no point in trying to live any longer. Naruto became quiet before looking at Nagato straight in the eyes. Peace is not possible in this world. Even you yourself are a problem that stands in creating true peace. And you? Replied Nagato. Aren't you a part of the problem as well? Naruto chuckled. Yes, I suppose I am now a part of the problem as well, huh? But the only difference is that I don't try to justify it by trying to create a mere false peace. Nagato shook his head. I wasn't trying to justify anything. I was merely trying to bring peace to the world in the only way that it seems possible by a lie. You may be right, said Naruto as he activates his Rinnegan, but you may also be wrong. To me though, peace is the last thing that I care about. True peace will only be made possible when there is no more hatred and darkness. Something very unlikely. Nagato chuckled, except it was dead. That is the truth. Uzumaki Naruto, I ask you for a favor. It probably sounds strange considering that we are enemies, but I don't think you'll mind. I ask you, can you please kill me? Naruto didn't respond. He merely launched a fireball at Nagato, who didn't try to dodge. Naruto stared emotionlessly as the fires consumed Nagato, except that Nagato didn't scream. Instead he had a smile on his face. That was... what? I don't know. Naruto-kun. Naruto turned to see Kushina walking in, an Akatsuki cloak on and held one out. This is yours, she said. Tsunade merely stood by one of the windows in her office, watching as the rain continued to fall strongly. Tsunade-sama, muttered Shizune as she looked at her teacher. She knew something was wrong with Tsunade. Having traveled with the woman for about 20 years, she learned all the quirks that there were to Tsunade. Right now, she was troubled. I shouldn't have sent that idiot by himself, thought Tsunade. She had to keep focused on Fu at the moment. She knew that, but the feeling of uneasiness just wouldn't go away. But there was just no way that something had happened to Jiraiya. Right? Tsunade's eyes began to water slightly. There was just no way she could handle losing anyone else. And if it were Jiraiya of all people. Come back safe, Jiraiya. Naruto stared at the village of Aim below as it burst into commotion. About half of the villagers suddenly turned into ash out of nowhere. The remaining could only scream in fear, wondering if they would be next. Naruto stood on top of the highest tower, Kushina on his left, and Mikoto on his right. The rest of the Jinchuriki were behind them. They now all wore the Akatsuki cloaks. Now, said Naruto, Rinnegan activated. It's time for the next move. The rain continued to fall. Kabuto could only chuckle as he gazed at the remains of none other than Uchiha Madara himself. Yes, he thought with a smirk, with this, there is no way that I'm going to lose. You're dead meat. Kabuto smirked and jumped out of the way as Black Zetsu appeared on the spot he just previously occupied. You've made a terrible mistake, stated White Zetsu as he appeared on one of the walls. Kabuto's smirk was still in place. Oh no, you two made a terrible mistake in not guarding this better, but I guess it's my gain in your loss. Black Zetsu scowled. You have no idea what you're dealing with here, boy. Kabuto frowned at being called a boy. Oh, but I think I do. But this is nothing for you to concern yourself with. He smirked as he dispersed into snakes. Black Zetsu scowled again as he looked at Madara's disturbed grave site. This is not going to end well. There were few things that could really scare Obito in this world any longer, if any at all. After all, after dying and coming back to life there really was nothing else that could possibly come closer than that. But at the moment, he was staring face to something that really did scare him. What was that, you may be asking yourself? The answer to that would be Mikoto's pissed-off face. Tell me again, she began slowly and dangerously with narrowed eyes, exactly what you have been up to these past few hours? Currently we find the newly formed Akatsuki as well as Obito, Sasuke, and the others in one of the many Uchiha hideouts just outside of AIM. Who would have known that the Uchiha clan had hideouts all over the entire elemental nations? Well, began Obito, rubbing the back of his head, I sorta got distracted after having a rendezvous with Sasuke and those two. Karen scoffed. Distracted my ass. She muttered. She was sitting on a big round table just like the one on the previous hideout that they had spent a few days in. She wore an Akatsuki cloak over her usual attire. The others themselves were sitting all around the table, except for Mikoto and Obito of course. Mikoto tapped her right foot impatiently. And what exactly was that? A drinking contest. Obito then found himself on the ground with a fist mark on his left cheek. Mikoto shook her fist in anger after having punched Obito. This guy. Sasuke could only shake his head from his sitting position in the room. He now too wore an Akatsuki cloak. And this is my family. He thought with a twitching eyebrow. The Jinchuriki themselves could only stare in bewilderment at the scene in front of them, not sure if it was a genjutsu or not. As amusing as this is, began Naruto with a twitching eyebrow as well, we have better things to do at the moment. Kushina merely chuckled silently from her spot next to Naruto. Mikoto turned from Obito who was getting up with a shake of her head, making her way to sit on the other side of Naruto. This earned a raised eyebrow in surprise from Sasuke, but didn't say anything. So what exactly happened? He asked after a few moments of silence glancing at the newly revived members. Tobi is dead, answered Naruto simply. And the rest of the Akatsuki has fallen, he further added. Don't forget about us, said Black Zetsu as he appeared and rose from the ground. The others took notice that White Zetsu was glued, if that is the right verb to use, to him once more. What is he doing here? Asked Mikoto, referring to White Zetsu. I've filled him in. And, said Kushina. I'm in, answered White Zetsu with a grin. And here I thought you were Tobi's faithful follower, commented Naruto. White Zetsu chuckled. No, I'm Madara's. Although, I'm quite hurt that you three hadn't included me in your plans, he further added, referring to Mikoto, Obito, and his other counterpart. Obito shrugged. Tobi created you. So we assumed that you would follow him no matter what. And then we would have to dispose of you, which would create too many problems that would jeopardize everything. White Zetsu snorted. Well, you thought wrong. I had already acquired the information that Madara created the first White Zetsu, and that he didn't have any faith at all in Tobi. How? asked Mikoto, surprised. I don't know, answered White Zetsu, but I already knew of it from the moment I was created. I take it was another modification done by Madara, thought Naruto. Not surprising, I suppose. Why were you with him this whole time then? Asked Kushina. Because there was nothing else for me to do, answered White Zetsu, or so I thought, he further added. This is fun and all, interrupted Utakata with sarcasm, but what exactly are we supposed to do now? Mikoto glared at him and was about to bitch him out when Naruto spoke first. Crush Konoha. And how are you exactly going to do that? Asked Yagura. I know from experience that that village is not an easy place to destroy, if it is possible at all. Naruto smirked. Every place has its weakness, Yagura. You, being a Kage, should know that already. And what is Konoha's weakness? Asked Rashi. Simple. It's their arrogance, stated Naruto. They think that since they're the strongest village that no one will ever attempt anything that we are trying to do. And we will take the most advantage out of that as we possibly can. But how? Asked Yagura. You leave that to me, answered Naruto. We may have a problem that will complicate things, said Black Zetsu. And what is that? Asked Kushina. Kabuto, answered White Zetsu. Obito scowled at that. Asshole got away from me last time. But how exactly is he a big threat at the moment? He has Madara's DNA, stated Black Zetsu. What? Exclaimed Mikoto as she stood up. What do you mean? How? He snuck into the chamber where Madara was buried in the original hideout, said White Zetsu with a scowl. How he knew where it was, I have no idea. Orochimaru, thought Mikoto in anger. Even in death, that bastard always has a way to complicate things. Obito was thinking the same thing at the moment. And why is that such a problem? Asked Yujito, confused. Because he knows how to perform the Edo Tensei, answered Obito. Seriously? Said Kushina in surprise. That's the jutsu that can bring people back from the dead, isn't it? Stated Sasuke. Mikoto nodded as she sat back down. Yes, it is. Although it doesn't entirely bring them back from the dead. More like a state between life and death. The one that the Nidaime Hokage created, thought Naruto. This is a problem, muttered Obito. Yes it is, agreed Naruto, but we can't let this stop us. We just have to take him out before he can become an even bigger nuisance. Easier said than done, responded Mikoto, that guy is like the reincarnation of Orochimaru. Slippery and ugly as hell. Kushina chuckled. That is a horrible combination. Where is he now? Asked Obito to Zetsu. If we knew, we wouldn't be here, responded White Zetsu. True enough, said Obito. Naruto shook his head. Like I said, we shouldn't let this stop us. Kabuto will be dealt with accordingly. In the meantime. He turned to the other Jinchuriki, we have villages to gather. Oh, said Mikoto in surprise. So I suppose it's time to bring them in. Naruto nodded. Yes. The only ones not in this are Suna and Kiri, said Mikoto. And I don't remember doing anything with IWA, said Naruto with narrowed eyes. Mikoto chuckled sheepishly. Oh, right. I forgot to mention that the Tsuchikage agreed to help us. You managed to convince that old goat? Asked Kushina incredulously. Mikoto shrugged. It wasn't hard. I simply agreed that the remaining Uchiha would settle in his village and bam, he agreed. Of course. Muttered Rashi with a frown on his face. Han stayed silent. The fact that destroying Konoha is our objective was just a bonus, added Mikoto with a wave of her hand. Why not Kiri? Asked Yagura all of a sudden. Naruto merely shrugged. There hasn't been any reason to include them. But we better move fast before things really start to become hectic. Obito snorted at that. Please. Things have already become hectic with what you did in AIM. Half of the population is dead, not to mention the fact that its leadership is also out. The other nations must know of this by now. It wouldn't surprise me if any one of them were planning an attack at the moment, which would lead to another war," muttered Kushina. "Which is why we need to act fast," said Naruto as he stood up. "You two," he began, pointing towards Rashi and Han, "you two will go with Sasuke and his group and head to Iwa and tell the Tsuchikage to prepare his shinobi as well as to not attack AIM. They are of no importance." "That place again," thought Sasuke with a frown, as well as the fact that he was ordered by Naruto but decided to let it go. "Be patient," he further added, remembering what Mikoto had said to him. At Rashi and Han's nod, Naruto turned towards Yagura and Utakata. "I suppose it would only be beneficial if Kiri would join in this as well," began Naruto with a smirk, "so you two will head to Kiri and see if you can convince the Mizukage." Yagura nodded and Utakata sighed but nodded as well. He wasn't very fond of going back there, but if it helped him finally be free forever at last, then he would do it. Naruto then turned to Yujito and B. "I take it you already know where you two will go?" he asked, although it was more of a statement really. Both Yujito and B merely nodded. "I will go with them as well, Mikoto." "And why is that?" asked Naruto with a raised eyebrow. Mikoto shrugged. "I quite like their company," she responded, referring to both Yujito and B. Naruto narrowed his eyes, not believing her for a second. Hell, no one present did. Mikoto saw his suspicious look and merely sighed before sending him a look as if to say, "I'll tell you later." Naruto then turned to Obito. "You have a special job to do." Obito raised an eyebrow, not sure if that was a good thing or not. "And what is that?" he asked. "Simple. You're going to track down our pal Kabuto." "I'm sure you would want to kill him the most out of all of us here," answered Naruto, referring to how Kabuto had managed to escape from being killed by Obito. Obito merely nodded. "You two will help," Naruto further added, referring to both Zetsus. "Heh, of course," said White Zetsu with a grin. Black Zetsu didn't comment. "I guess that takes care of everyone," said Naruto as he made his way towards the door out of the room, Kushina following him. "And what will you do?" asked Sasuke. "Something important," answered Naruto without turning around and walking out, Kushina right behind him. "Well then," said Obito as began to disappear in a vortex, "till we meet again." He completely disappeared, Zetsu right after him, although without saying anything else. "Wait here," ordered Mikoto to Yujito and B as she made her way towards the door. Yujito scowled at Mikoto's back. B didn't respond. "We should get going," said Yagura to Utakata, who merely nodded. The two left the room as well. Sasuke stood up and turned to look at Rashi and Han. "We should start moving as well." Rashi nodded. "Right." Han didn't seem like he heard Sasuke, but made his way towards the door nonetheless. Suigetsu grumbled. "Again with the moving," he muttered. Karen scoffed and readjusted her glasses as they made their way towards the door. "Stop complaining, will you? Bitch," he muttered. "What else are you hiding from us?" Mikoto sighed. "Nothing else but the fact that the Raikage is under my genjutsu." "And when were you planning on telling us?" asked Kushina with a glare. "Look, there hasn't really been an appropriate time to tell you till now, okay?" responded Mikoto. It wasn't a mistake to not completely trust her, thought Naruto. "Humph. I told you, didn't I?" "Hell, I'm pretty sure even Mito did." Kushina shook her head. "It's really hard to believe that now." "But now there really isn't anything else, I swear," responded Mikoto. "We will see about that," interrupted Naruto, "but for now, we have things that need to be done." Mikoto sighed but nodded. "All right then. I'll contact you when it's done." After she had left, Kushina turned towards her son. "What exactly are we doing anyways?" Naruto merely looked up to look at the clouds moving peacefully in the sky. We're going back to Konoha, he finally answered. Kushina became confused. What for? She asked. This time Naruto didn't reply. I'm sure Neji has done his part by now, he thought. Neji carefully made his way to the rendezvous point in the poorest part of the village. He made sure to keep his senses up to see if he was followed, but as of the moment no one was. Neji could only smirk to himself, to think that Naruto actually managed to get a root umbu under his command. I must say, I am impressed. After having walked for about 10 minutes, Neji stopped in front of a bar. The establishment was in the same condition that every other building in this area was torn apart, and seemed as if it could collapse at any moment. Even though the Hyuga clan was one of more classes than this whole area, Neji himself didn't mind. He wasn't one of those stuck-up members that thought that anyone or anything not related to the Hyuga clan was trash. Well, not anymore at least. Neji stopped his musing and subtly checked one more time to see if he was being followed. After being satisfied that he wasn't, he walked into the bar. As he made his way to one of the back tables, Neji ignored all the glances that were sent his way from the others that were present in the bar. They of course recognized the fact that Neji was a Hyuga, which surprised them all. After all, what would a member from such a prestigious clan such as the Hyuga be doing here? Neji sighed as he sat down on the farthest table on the back, coming face to face with a white umbu mask. I take it, you have it? Asked Neji. Yes, came the emotionless reply. The root member then took out a scroll and handed it to Neji, who pocketed it with his kunai pouch. Neji nodded. Good. I really can't stay much longer, said the root umbu member using the same emotionless tone. Danzo would become suspicious. Neji smirked. Oh, I don't know about that. The umbu didn't reply, but Neji could feel the curiosity radiating off the umbu. Danzo is currently too busy at the moment. With what? Neji chuckled. It's nothing for you to concern yourself with, now get going. Like you said, it wouldn't be good if anyone got suspicious. Umbu didn't reply. He merely stood up and walked out of the bar. Neji could only chuckle once again. Oh yes, I'm pretty sure Danzo must be feeling pretty happy at the moment. If only he knew that it would only lead to his downfall. Within the council chamber in the Hokage building, Danzo was indeed really content with how things were going at the moment. He might have lost the Kyuubi, something that he was going to rectify soon, but he would definitely take the most advantage out of the situation as possible. And what would that be? Can anyone guess? Well, I'll simply tell you anyway. I believe that it is imperative that Danzo trains the remaining Jinchuriki, said Hayashi. Fu currently stood at the center of the room, an emotionless look on her face. I also agree, stated Tsum with a dark look. Her son had just been recently killed, so it wasn't really surprising to anyone. And who did it? Uzumaki Naruto himself. And if that could have been avoided if Danzo had simply trained the boy, then Tsum would make sure the other Jinchuriki present would be, so that the same mistake could not be repeated twice. Tsunade had to keep back the scowl from appearing on her face at Danzo's pleased look. But what could she do? Nothing. After Naruto's obvious betrayal, the entire council didn't want the same thing to happen with Fu. And their solution to that? Have Danzo train her, of course. So everyone is in agreement about this? Asked Hamura. The entire shinobi council nodded. The civilians weren't present at the meeting. Of course, they had tried to be, but after Tsunade had threatened every single member to crush them in half if they so much as set foot in the council room, they ran with their tails between their legs. They may be arrogant, but they sure as hell weren't stupid. No choice then, thought Tsunade as she looked at Fu, who didn't appear alarmed at all. Tsunade narrowed her eyes on the girl. She resisted Ibiki pretty well, I must say. She of course was referring to the interrogation that had taken place about an hour earlier per the council's request. They wanted to make sure that the girl was not affiliated with Naruto in any way. There were too many unknowns for a Yamanaka to go inside the girl's mind with her being a Jinchuriki. So they did the next best thing. And Fu came clean. So now she was to be trained to be used by Konoha in replacement of Naruto until he was captured. She will be handed to Danzo immediately then, declared Koharu. I hope you don't have any objections at all, Hokage-sama, said Danzo with a smug undertone attached. Hey, he had every right to be at the moment. Of course not, said Tsunade through gritted teeth. Wonderful then, replied Danzo. You are dismissed. Wait outside for now, said Hamura Tofu. For her part, Fu merely walked out. Once she had left, the council turned to another issue. It seems the Kazekage was in Konoha yesterday, stated Koharu. Tsunade nodded. Yes, he had an urgent message to give to me. And that was? Asked Hayashi. He's calling for a meeting with all the Kages, answered Tsunade, already knowing what kind of reaction the council would have. Preposterous, said Hamura. Does he really expect all the Kages to agree to that? Why is he calling for this meeting anyways? Asked Shikaku. Akatsuki, stated Tsunade. And I have to say that he is right about not underestimating that organization. They have already captured many of the Bijus. Who knows how many are left? Jiraiya is currently verifying the information he received, is he not? Asked Shibi. Tsunade nodded, although her face became slightly more gloomy at the reminder. Yes, but he has not returned for the moment. Then we don't need to attend that meeting, said Hayashi. If we know where their base is, we can simply take care of them ourselves. Tsunade nodded. Yes, you may be right about that, but if the other Kages agree and I don't attend, how is that going to reflect on Konoha? The council had to agree on that one. But for the moment we just have to wait and see, added Tsunade. I take it this meeting is done with them, said Danzo. I suppose it is, said Shikaku as he yawned. Meeting adjourned then, declared Tsunade. How do you feel, Gaara? Gaara turned to look at his sister's worried face. The three San siblings were taking a short stop to rest as they made their way back towards Suna. Worried and troubled, he answered. Temari sighed and frowned. About Naruto, I take it? Gaara nodded. Yes. It seems that things have changed for him. Maybe the shrimp is just trying to act like the Uchiha, commented Kankuro. To the extent of killing a clan head and being marked as a rogue shinobi, said Temari incredulously. Not even Naruto is that stupid. Besides, he wants to be Hokage. I think he can hardly do that with being marked as a rogue ninja. Kankuro shrugged. Hey, the kid isn't smart after all. Gaara silently sighed as Temari and Kankuro began to bicker. No, he thought to himself, something else must have happened for him to be doing this. But the question is what? And what is he planning on doing now? Fu had to keep the frown from her face as she followed behind Danzo. Two Umbu under Danzo's command were right behind her, quiet as they always were. So this must be their base, thought Fu as she subtly looked around the underground base. And underground too, huh? Not surprising, but he must have more than just one. But I'm sure Niji will have more info on this than me, she thought. The group silently made their way deeper into the base. Everything was silent except for the soft sound of Danzo's cane and their footsteps, which was creeping Fu out beyond belief. Just what is it with this guy, thought Fu, referring to Danzo. A few minutes later they stopped in front of a door. One of the Umbu opened it and it led to what appeared to be a room, a simple one at that. There was a fairly sized bed, a desk, and another door but was opened and which led to what appeared to be a small bathroom, and that was it. Well, I'm used to the worst, thought Fu, remembering the conditions she had lived in Taki. This will be your sleeping quarters, said Danzo to her for the first time. You will remain here until you are called for training and will not be allowed to leave this room at all other than when you are told to. Food will be brought to you as well. Fu simply nodded. Good, said Danzo as he began to walk away. Get some rest then. We will soon start with your training. The two Umbu motioned for Fu to get inside the room, making the girl internally roll her eyes. She released a sigh as the door closed. She made her way to the bed and collapsed on it. This is what you wanted, isn't it? Shut up, you stupid bug. Chomei snarled. Bug? Why should I? Too tired, interrupted Fu with a yawn. You can scold me later. Oh no, you don't. You listen to me. No, don't you dare go to sleep. Good night, Nanabai-chan. Chan? I'm not a female idiot. But Fu wasn't listening to him anymore. She merely let sleep take her. Tsunade sighed as more paperwork appeared on her desk. The vein of any Kage, she thought with a frown. Tsunade-sama, said Shizun as she walked into the room carrying another large stack of papers and placed it on Tsunade's desk. There's more, said Tsunade incredulously, making Shizun giggle. And this is just the beginning, responded Shizun. Fucking Hokage duties, thought Tsunade bitterly. Before anything else could happen, a puff of smoke in the middle of the office caught the attention of both women. Tsunade raised an eyebrow as a small toad appeared on top of a fairly sized toad. Is that you, Fukasaku? Asked Tsunade. Tsunade-chan, said Fukasaku with a smile, it sure has been a while, hasn't it? Yes, agreed Tsunade with a nod, but what are you doing here? Fukasaku sighed sadly at remembering why he was here in the first place. I am sad to inform you that I bring you bad news, Tsunade-chan. Tsunade's heart pulse quickened. And what is that? She asked cautiously. Jiraiya-chan is dead, he simply stated. Both Tsunade and Shizun's eyes widened in shock at that. What? Said Tsunade. The old toad nodded sadly. I'm afraid you have heard me right. Tsunade-sama, thought Shizun as she turned to look at her master worriedly. Tsunade herself was shaking, not believing what she had just heard. Jiraiya was dead? Impossible. That was just simply impossible, right? Who did it? Asked Tsunade quietly after coming out of her initial shock of having now lost another precious person in her life, probably the last one that she had left. Fukasaku regretted saying this part to Tsunade the most. After all, the person who had killed Jiraiya was. It was Uzumaki Naruto. Silence. Shizun almost fainted out of shock at that answer. She was expecting anyone else to have done it. But Naruto? This had to be the most cruel and horrible joke in existence. Tsunade wasn't in any better state than Shizun, hell, she was worse. What did you say? Asked Tsunade in a deadly voice. If this is a joke, it's not a good one, she further added. Fukasaku shook his head. I wish I was joking. But unfortunately, I am not. It is the truth. But why? Said Shizun. Why would Naruto-kun do something like that? I'm sure you know more about the why than I do, replied the old toad. Is he really going to try to destroy the village? Thought Tsunade. But then another thought came to her mind. What was Naruto doing in AIM? Wait, it was in AIM where Jiraiya died, right? Fukasaku nodded. Yes, but I don't know why Naruto was there. Gamaken, who Jiraiya-chan summoned, told us that Naruto was fighting with Akatsuki when Jiraiya-chan arrived. So he really was behind the fights against Akatsuki, thought Tsunade while her hands turned into fists. What happened afterwards? Asked Shizun. Fukasaku shook his head again. I'm afraid we do not know the details, except that Jiraiya-chan died. The how is still a mystery. We need to get to AIM this instant and find out what exactly has happened there, said Tsunade. I agree, said Fukasaku, but there is something else that you need to know. And what is that? Asked Tsunade, already knowing that she was going to dread the answer. Fukasaku was silent for a few moments, before looking at Tsunade, eyes to eyes. I don't know if Jiraiya-chan ever told you this, but the great sage Toad once told Jiraiya-chan of his future and a prophecy as well. Tsunade nodded, already knowing what it was about. I do, but what does this have to? She paused, and her eyes widened again, this time in alarm. You can't possibly mean. She left the question hanging. I believe so, answered Fukasaku. It's possible that this boy might be the child of the prophecy. Child of the prophecy, repeated Shizun, confused beyond belief. But he was meant to save the world then, exclaimed Tsunade, ignoring Shizun's confused look for the moment. Fukasaku sighed. Not necessarily. The great sage Toad said that the child would cause a great catastrophe or bring peace to the world. It all depended on Jiraiya-chan's choice. And what choice is that? Asked Tsunade. I don't know, answered Fukasaku honestly, but if this boy is the one. Tsunade nodded. I understand. Thank you for sharing this with us. Fukasaku nodded. We will keep in touch then. We will tell you if we find anything else and ask if you do the same. At Tsunade's nod, he continued. All right then. He disappeared in a puff of smoke. Shizun, said Tsunade, making said woman jump in surprise. Yes? Asked Shizun. Bring me cat, answered Tsunade. Now. Shizun could only nod as she made her ways towards the door and out of the office. Tsunade laid her head back on her chair once Shizun had left. Tears began to fall, the sadness and the implications of what she had just learned finally hitting with maximum force. Jiraiya, currently within the Konoha hospital, one Haruno Sakura could not concentrate on her tasks at all. It had gotten so bad that she had been forced to take a break. She was currently on top of the hospital roof, enjoying the soft breeze. To think that she had finally thought that she was making progress in recreating in what was in her opinion the best time of her life. Mainly the old Team 7. But now all that was blown to hell. But she shouldn't be surprised. Since the first moment she had met Naruto again after his disappearance, which he claimed was his training trip, she could tell that something had definitely changed in what used to be that cheerful blonde that she had known her whole life. But she just never expected it to be this big of a change. Just what exactly had happened to the old Naruto? That was the question that had been plaguing her mind ever since she had returned, and she could not find an answer for it no matter what. And then there was Fu. Sakura had no idea what to think about the girl. The fact that she and Naruto had apparently dated put a big frown on the pink-haired girl's face. Of course she hadn't told anyone of it, not really seeing any meaning into it. Last Sakura heard Fu was getting special training, whatever that meant. But it did mean that Team 7 was disbanded once more. That thought brought a sad look upon Sakura's face. But then a determined one took its place. She would not give up. She should find some way for Naruto to be forgiving for killing Kiba and then bring him back along with Sasuke-kun. She would not give up no matter what. Kakashi could only stare at the memorial stone in the old Team 7 training grounds in remorse. Just when had he screwed up so much? That question plagued his mind once again. He had finally thought that things were looking up when Naruto returned, albeit a bit shaky, but it was progress. But then Naruto goes and does something like he did which completely obliterates any hopes he had had. Sensei, thought Kakashi, what would you do? Would you forgive me for having failed in helping your son? And Kushina. Kakashi didn't know what to think of the redhead. She was as powerful as he remembered her, and still looked as young as she had done. That brought a frown upon Kakashi's face. Who knows what she did to achieve that? But a bigger question would be why she and Naruto were doing what they were doing. Why did they hate Konoha? It just didn't make any sense. Right? Kakashi sighed. So many questions, and he didn't have a single answer. Kabuto could only chuckle to himself as he looked at Konoha's gate from a cliff. I'm almost there, he thought with a smirk. He walked down from the cliff and took the main road that led to the village gates. Within about 10 minutes, Kabuto stood in front of the closed gates. How easy it could be for him to just sneak in and halt. An Umbu squad of 4 surrounded him. Okay, maybe it would not be easy for him to just sneak in. Unless he killed them, of course. But then again, that would destroy the purpose as to why he bothered to come here in the first place. Kabuto raised his arms up in the air. "I surrender," he said with a smirk. "Who are you?" asked one of the Umbu who Kabuto presumed to be the leader. "I'm Yakushi Kabuto," he answered, the smirk still in place, "and I have a proposition for your Hokage." Darkness. That was all he could see at the moment. Naruto looked around his surroundings once again to make sure what he was seeing was the actual truth. Once he did, he couldn't help but to frown. "Where am I?" he wondered to himself. Another fact came to light. He was floating. What is this? He tried to move, but then he realized that he couldn't do that either. So in short, he was floating around in a space that was all black with no living thing in sight, and he couldn't move. Did I miss something? Well, this sucks, thought Naruto with a frown again. Seconds passed, and before he knew it he came to a complete stop, meaning that he wasn't floating to some random direction, rather just staying in one spot. Naruto stood, floated, in the spot with an impassive look on his face as something in front of him chuckled. He then found himself staring into one huge eye, his Rinnegan activating on its own. Those eyes. Said whatever it was, I haven't seen them for quite some time. Naruto didn't respond, merely staring right into the eye. So, it was you who awoke me. Interesting. May I ask what you're planning on doing? So, it's finally awake, thought Naruto. A little sooner than what the scroll said, but welcome nonetheless. You'll see soon enough, answered Naruto. Silence was the response, but then chuckling was heard once more. You must think mighty of yourself if you think you can contain and control me, child. Naruto shook his head and smirked. That's not it. I'm sure you'll join me eventually once you find out why exactly you have been revived. Ha ha ha. You're definitely different from that other human who possessed those eyes. And I'm starting to see that it won't be such a bad thing. I'm so glad, responded Naruto with some sarcasm. The eye disappeared. Show me then that what you say is true. I'll be watching. Naruto then found himself staring into Kushina's concerned face. Naruto shook his head as he stood up in a sitting position on the bed. Currently the two Uzumakis were in an average inn, not expensive but not cheap either, meaning it was just comfortable enough. It was currently dark outside, signifying the end of another day. What happened? Asked Kushina. You suddenly just passed out on me. Are you okay? Naruto nodded. Yes, in fact, I'm better than okay. Kushina raised an eyebrow. And what is that supposed to mean? Naruto shook his head as he laid back down. It's a surprise, he answered with a knowing smirk. Kushina scowled. I don't like surprises, she muttered in response. She then let out a squeal in surprise as Naruto tackled her to the bed. Oi, where exactly are we heading? Kiri is the other way if you haven't forgotten. Utakata shook his head. I know that. Unfortunately, I had to live there. But there's something that I need to do before we get there. Yagura raised an eyebrow in confusion. And just what is it that you need to do exactly? The two Jinchuriki from Kiri were currently walking down a road that led to the land of Earth, which was completely the opposite way to where Kiri was located. You'll see, answered the rogue ninja. Yagura could only sigh. I guess I'll have to follow him. I don't know what kind of trouble he would get in if I left him alone. Afterwards, the duo continued to make their way to wherever the hell Utakata was leading Yagura in silence. Yagura, for his part, he couldn't help but look up and stare into the star-filled sky. Beautiful night, he thought to himself. This is what he had always wanted, well, some aspects of this. Those aspects would be traveling, meeting new people, but most of all have friends and or a family. For no one to know that he was a Jinchuriki. No, that was wrong. A better way to put it would be for people to know that he was in fact a Jinchuriki but not to hate or despise him for it. Yagura couldn't help but smile at the thought. Yes, that would be the best. But then the smile disappeared. Unfortunately, that's a dream that will never happen. He came out of his thoughts as Yudakata stopped walking. Yagura turned to him with a confused look, before directing his gaze to where Yudakata was looking. A village, thought Yagura, now more confused than ever. Why would he want to come to a village? Before he could ask him, Yudakata continued to walk towards it. As they approached it, Yagura could see that it was in fact not a very big village. Rather, it was kind of small. Realization came upon Yagura at that point. I see, he thought, glancing at Yudakata. There must be something, or rather someone, for him here. I do wonder who though. As they approached the open gate that led inside into the village, a man followed by two others approached them. The man came to a stop in front of them. He directed his gaze at Yagura before turning it to Yudakata where it stayed. You, the man said simply. I've come here for Hataru, stated Yudakata. The man frowned. I'm sorry to say this, but she will stay here, where she is safe. That is why you left her here with us in the first place. The two men behind him were currently smirking in a very perverted way as their leader finished talking. Yudakata narrowed his eyes, having already seen the look the two men were sporting, and he didn't like it. Yagura for his part was still confused, but he could tell that whoever this Hataru person was, she was definitely not safe. In fact, that would be the last thing that she could be in this place. I will not repeat myself, said Yudakata through gritted teeth. Neither will I, responded the man. The next second he found himself on the floor, Yudakata overlooking him and placing his right foot on the man's stomach and stomping on it. Where is she, you son of a bitch? Before either of the other two men could move to help their leader, they fell on the ground, unconscious, courtesy of Yagura who was behind the two. Yagura lowered his right hand that he had used to knock them out and turned to look at Yudakata who was still stomping his foot on the third guy. You mind sharing with me just what exactly you're doing at the moment, said Yagura. Yudakata didn't respond to him. He merely picked up the third man by the collar. Tell me where you assholes have her right now. The man for his part might have been ambitious, a pervert, and a great deal of other things, but he sure as hell wasn't an idiot. All right. She's in a house at the farthest edge of the village. Now let me dash. He didn't get to finish as Yudakata broke his neck. He let the now dead body fall to the ground and took to the rooftops. Yagura, seeing no other choice, began to follow. Sakura sighed for what was the 100th time that night. She was currently sitting on one of the many stools in the Ichiraku ramen stand, staring into a bowl of ramen with a defeated look on her face. Just what am I doing in here anyways, she thought to herself. She then glanced at the young waitress, Aine, as she took the order of another customer with a smile on her face. But Sakura knew better. She could tell that the smile on the young woman's face was fake. All she needed to do was to look at the waitress's eyes. The sadness in them. So I'm not the only one then. I'm so surprised to see you here, Sakura. Said pink-haired Kunoichi turned her head to see another person sitting down next to her. Irika-sensei, she exclaimed, rather surprised. After all, when was the last time that she had seen her old academy teacher? Sakura couldn't honestly remember. Irika for his part turned to one of his old students with a forced smile. Fancy meeting you here, Sakura. May I ask what I owe this surprise to? Sakura turned to stare at the still full bowl of ramen in front of her. I don't know really, she answered truthfully. I guess I just wanted to come here to remember the past. Irika could only nod. Yes. I suppose that's why I'm here too. Sakura finally took her time to really study the academy teacher. He looked horrible. His whole uniform looked dirty like it hadn't been washed in days, and Irika's face looked as if he hadn't slept in a while. It finally clicked with Sakura. Of course, she thought sadly, if I'm feeling this bad, how bad is Irika-sensei feeling? Naruto was like family to him. I feel like this is all my fault, said Irika all of a sudden. Sakura shook her head at that. No, that's absurd. Why would you think that? You haven't even seen Naruto in Dash. Maybe that's why, interrupted Irika. When I heard that he had suddenly disappeared from the training trip that he had been on with Jiraiya-sama, I felt horrible. I didn't know what to think. But then he came back. At first I wanted nothing more than to just march up to his apartment and demand as to why he had disappeared. But then I heard how he was different, both looks and personality. How cold he was to everyone. So I chose to simply give him time and to then talk to him. He then chuckled bitterly. And then he leaves again. Only this time, it seems that it was obviously on purpose and not on friendly intentions. Sakura, who had been listening intently, spoke up. Yes, that's true, but how is any of this your fault? Maybe if I had just talked to him all of this could have been avoided, he answered. Sakura sighed. I don't think it's that simple, sensei, she responded, making Irika turn to her. Naruto, I really don't know how to explain it. It's like he's a really different person now. I still want him and Sasuke-kun to come back, but I know for a fact that it's going to take more than just talking. Something must have happened to him for him to be doing all of this. And unless we know what that was, I don't think any of us can really help him. Irika was silent for a few moments, before he smiled. Yeah, I suppose you're right about that. But we shouldn't give up, continued Sakura. Like I said, I still want him and Sasuke-kun to come back. And I will make it happen. I know that it won't be easy, but I'll still find a way, she finished with a determined look. Irika could only feel as if he was looking at a different Sakura now. Yes, he thought, if my student isn't giving up, then I shouldn't give up either. Utakata kicked open the front door of the house and found the living room to be filled with a line of men that led into a bedroom. An anxious one we got here, stated the guard that was standing by the door of the bedroom. Unfortunately, since this is the first night, the line is really big. The first one just went in, so you'll have to dash. Utakata didn't bother to finish listening to what the security guard had to say. Instead, red chakra started to surround him. All of you, he began, get the fuck out. All present began to scream before jumping out of windows, even the security guard. It was the only other way out other than the front door, but Utakata was standing in front of it, and there was no way in hell they were going to get near him. Utakata frowned as the red chakra began to disappear. I didn't call on your chakra. It's your anger. Now, shouldn't you be worrying about something else at the moment? Listening to the Rokubi, he made his way to the bedroom where there had previously been a line to get into. Yagura frowned as he walked into the house, just in time to see Utakata opening the door and walking into the bedroom. The sight before him made the anger return to Utakata full force. There on the bed, laid Hataru with a man on top of her, kissing her neck and fondling her breasts through her top. Hataru, for her part, was tied up and had her eyes closed, tears dropping down her face. Just what do you think you're doing, said Utakata dangerously. That caused the man on top of Hataru to stop. Hey, wait your damn turn, he answered, before he continued. He didn't, however, as he was flung back to the floor. The man scowled as he stood up. Hey, just what the hell is your dash? He didn't get to finish as his head was cut off, courtesy of Yagura. The now decapitated body fell on the floor. Utakata turned to look at Yagura, who was on the doorway, who also shrugged. I can tell what was happening, he answered Utakata's unasked question, just as I can tell that this girl is precious to you. He then walked back into the living room, giving Utakata some privacy. Utakata turned his attention to Hataru, who still had her eyes closed and crying. Hataru, said Yudikata softly as he approached her. He knelt next to the bed just as Hataru slowly opened her eyes. Is that you, sensei? She asked hopefully. Yudikata smiled. Yes, it's me. He then proceeded to untie her. Once he had done so, the now freed Hataru embraced him and began to cry on his shoulder. I was so scared, she admitted through her tears, I thought you were dead. I'm not, responded Yudikata softly, I'm so sorry for leaving you here. I thought that you would be safe. The blonde girl continued to cry until she fell asleep, everything that had happened having taken a toll. Yudikata picked up her bridal style and walked out of the room and into the living room. He turned towards Yugura, who was leaning on one of the walls. Thank you, said Yudikata. It had been rare that he said those words and truly meant it. Don't mention it, responded Yugura. The two Jinchuriki and now unconscious girls began to make their way out of the house. I'm burning this whole village down, stated Yudikata with an emotionless look. Yugura didn't respond. Kabuto could only chuckle despite the position he found himself in. Currently we find Orochimaru No. 2 held up in chains with his chakra sealed off in one of the many prison rooms within Konoha. All is going according to plan, he thought to himself. Then the door that led into his room opened. Tsunade, followed by Ibiki and Enko, entered the room. It's about time, said Kabuto. Shut up, said Tsunade as she stopped in front of him. You're so damn lucky that you're still alive at the moment. Kabuto chuckled. No, it has nothing to do with luck. It's simply the fact that I have much information that you want, no need. That's why those two are here, said Kabuto, referring to Ibiki and Enko. Tsunade smirked. So you're not a complete idiot. But walking to Konoha and surrendering yourself was a completely dumb thing to do. It was Kabuto's turn to smirk. I do wonder about that. After all, I just said that I have much information that you need. And I'm completely offering it all to you in turn to letting me stay here. Not in this prison. Konoha, I mean. Tsunade laughed, hard. Ha ha ha. Oh, that's hilarious. And just why exactly should I even consider that? After all, my two shinobi behind me can just find and take that information forcefully and then I can kill you. Now that sounds like a better option to me, don't you think? Kabuto's smirk was still in place. Don't you remember who I used to follow? Do you really think I'm going to be broken by these two? Ha, that's an even more hilarious thought. And if you try any of those Yamanaka techniques, his smirk got wider, well I'm sure you remember what happened with that Akatsuki member you had captured, Haiden, don't you? Tsunade frowned at that. You would go that far? Like I said, you do remember who my master was, don't you? Responded Kabuto. Tsunade scowled. Believe me, I know. Well then, just what exactly do you have? First, let me out of these, said Kabuto, referring to his chains. Tsunade-sama, I must disagree with this, stated Ibiki with a frown. Of course you do, said Kabuto with a chuckle, but it works in your favor in the end. Tsunade sighed. Ibiki, let him out. But dash. He can't use any chakra, interrupted Tsunade. So even if by some miracle he did escape out of this room, this is a whole prison filled with umbu. He won't be going anywhere. Ibiki nodded and reluctantly freed Kabuto. Once freed, Kabuto rubbed both his wrists. That wasn't comfortable, you know, he said. Just get to the point before I really do kill you, said Tsunade coldly. Fine, fine. You're really no fun. Tsuanda's mood didn't change, making Kabuto sigh. Alright. The information I'm about to give you will help you at the very least be prepared for the upcoming war. War? Said Tsunade in disbelief. Oh right, war means that you actually stood a chance. How about calling it a slaughter, he said with a smirk. Just what are you talking about? Asked Tsunade impatiently. How does this bastard know, thought Enko. Kabuto shrugged. It's simple really. All of the mistakes that Konoha has made in the past are finally catching up to bite it in the ass. And what does that mean? Said Tsunade. The Uchiha massacre for one, stated Kabuto, making Tsuanda's eyes widened. What does that have to do with this? Asked Tsunade. Kabuto snorted. Please. The fact that Sasuke was left alive is a threat in itself. But the fact that others survived as well, and who knows just why exactly that night occurred. Well, let's just say that should make it obvious as to what I'm talking about. So this means that Sasuke knows as well, but who told him, thought Tsunade. Kabuto chuckled at Tsunade's troubled look. You must be wondering as to who told him. The answer to that would be his mother Uchiha Mikoto. What? Screamed Tsunade. But she died that night. Kabuto chuckled some more. I do wonder about that. Tsunade scowled. Listen you. I'm telling you the truth, interrupted Kabuto with a serious look, but she's not your biggest threat. Well, she was one of them, but not anymore. Tsunade knew with all her heart as to whom Kabuto was talking about, but she still asked, then who is? Uzumaki Naruto. Son of a bitch, thought Anko, referring to Kabuto. Ibiki for his part, even though he didn't show it, he was confused as hell as to what exactly the two were discussing. He did, however, understand the last part. After all, he already knew what Naruto had done when he had left. Tsunade's hands clenched and formed into fists. Do you know where he is right now? Kabuto shook his head. No, I don't. And before you say that I have no more use anymore, I have something that will really help you win this war. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. Just what do you mean by war? I find it really hard to believe that an entire village against a few people could hardly be called a war. Kabuto chuckled. You're right. And in this case, you're the few people, or Konoha in general. And just what is that supposed to mean? Asked Tsunade. Kabuto readjusted his glasses. Ever since Naruto has plotted his revenge, he and his allies have enlisted the help of hidden villages. Kyumo, for example, is one of them. There are more. Tsunade's eyes widened again. That's unbelievable, finished Kabuto. Isn't this whole situation unbelievable as well? But that's reality. I see then. Muttered Tsunade before she focused on Kabuto again. And just what else is it that you offer? Kabuto smirked. The Edo Tensei. Tsunade's blood ran cold at the mention of the jutsu. Do you really think I'm going to be in favor of you using that monstrous jutsu? Kabuto shrugged. You don't really have a choice. If you don't accept, you'll be destroyed for sure. But if you do accept, well, at least you'll stand a chance. He's right, thought Tsunade, but should I really care about this place anymore? There's still good people in this village, Haim. Tsunade's eyes widened as she recalled what Jiraiya had told her. Good people, huh? She had to admit to that, but was that really worth fighting for? A few people in a whole village as big as Konoha? Maybe, maybe not. But what she did think was worth fighting for was to protect her clan's legacy, or what was left of it. That thought made her decision. If they cleared out of this, she would make sure that the village would be cleansed and returned to what it had been when her grandfather was in charge, so that none of this could ever repeat itself. She looked at Kabuto. Listen here closely, you brat. If you think of double-crossing us, I will snap you in half. You got that? Kabuto held up his arms in defense. Please. Why do you think I'm here in the first place? You succeed, I don't die. You don't succeed, I die. I'll double-cross Konoha once this is all over. That's better than nothing, thought Tsunade before facing Anko. Go tell Shizen to make sure that Kat and her team double-time it on their way to AIM right now. That's unnecessary, stated Kabuto. I know exactly as to what has happened in AIM. Of course he would, thought Tsunade. Well, she said. Kabuto smirked. It's simple really. Naruto has taken down Akatsuki. Anko smirked internally. Heh, you're an incredible brat. I thought as much, muttered Tsunade. Tell Shizune to send a message to Kat telling them to return then, said Tsunade to Anko. Anko nodded before making her way out of the room. Kabuto chuckled internally as he watched Anko walk away. Of course, I never said that I didn't have other motives for coming here, did I? Really Tsunade, you're just too easy to fool. So we're here, muttered Kushina as she and Naruto walked out one of the many emergency evacuation tunnels of the village of Konoha. The sight that greeted them was a forest with what appeared to be debris everywhere of what seemed to have been a house, the morning sun shining full force. This was supposed to have been our house, said Kushina. Naruto looked at the debris. What happened to it? He asked. It was destroyed during the night that Kyuubi attacked, she answered. So the Yondaime had an evacuation tunnel built next to his house. Why? Said Naruto. Because of you, answered Kushina with a frown. After I had told him that I was pregnant, he made sure to take all the necessary precautions that he could. In what was to be your room, he kept Hiratian seals in every corner of the room. This was just simply another one of his precautions. Naruto didn't respond to that. He merely started to walk with Kushina, who still had a frown, following him. They stopped when they were right in front of the debris. They didn't have to wait long, however, as Niji landed behind them. Right on time. Niji, said Naruto without turning around. Niji merely nodded and took in the fact that he was wearing the Akatsuki uniform before glancing at the redhead next to the blonde. This is Kushina, answered Naruto as he turned around to face him. She's another person who has joined us. She's also my mother. Niji's eyes widened at the revelation. But I thought both of your parents died? I did die, answered Kushina, but he revived me. She gave him the shorter version of things. How? Asked Niji incredulously. The Rinnegan, stated Naruto. He didn't have to say anything else as realization came upon Niji's face. Of course, thought Niji, this is the greatest dojutsu in existence after all. It shouldn't be surprising that it can do something like reviving people. Niji, said Naruto, if you want for me to. No, interrupted Niji, already knowing what Naruto was going to say. My father died because he chose to. If I asked for you to revive him, I would be disrespecting him. Naruto nodded. If that is your choice. It is, said Niji. He then took out the scroll that the root Umbu had given him, and gave it to Naruto. Naruto took it and eyed the scroll. Is Fu in position? He asked. Niji nodded. Yes. All that needs to be done is for you to give the signal. Good. Then stay low for now. I'll contact you when the time comes. Now go before anyone wonders where you were. Niji nodded before jumping onto a nearby tree branch. He turned to look back at the two Uzumakis. Good luck, he said simply before taking off. What's in the scroll? Asked Kushina as Naruto opened said scroll. Information about Danzo and every single one of his operations, answered Naruto as he read it. How did you get that? Asked Kushina, shocked. I placed a genjutsu on one of Danzo's Umbu thanks to Kurama. You're welcome. Naruto rolled his eyes internally. When? Said Kushina. Naruto glanced at her with a smirk. When you were too busy moping about how to get in my pants. Of course, I didn't know it at the time but. Kushina blushed in embarrassment. Don't say it like that. Naruto shrugged. Well, it's true. Kushina huffed and turned her head away with her arms crossed, the blush still present. Naruto chuckled before turning his complete attention back to the scroll. He soon reached a certain part that had his eyes widening. This is. Kushina glanced at her son to see his shocked face. Her blush disappeared and she turned serious. What is it? She asked him. Naruto closed the scroll and looked at her. It would seem that Mito is more clever than we thought. Obito could only shake his head repeatedly. There's just no fucking way that that bastard could be inside there. Are you doubting us, you idiot? Obito sighed. It just doesn't make any sense. Wait, yes it does. White Zetsu chuckled. About time you caught on, you idiot. Wait, you mean you knew? Black Zetsu scoffed. Of course we did. The second we knew that he was in Konoha, it was the second after that that we knew as to why he went there in the first place. Obito's sweat dropped. Aren't you exaggerating a little bit there? No, we are not, they answered at the same time. Obito's eyes twitched. Whatever, he muttered before facing Konoha. Currently, both Zetsu and Obito are overlooking Konoha from a high cliff. Mikoto is not going to like this. Mikoto merely stared at the floating water of a stream in silence. Currently Yujito, B, and she were resting before they continued on their way to Kumo. She was currently wondering about the choices she had made. If she had refused Black Zetsu's offer, what would have happened differently? She would be dead, that's for sure. And would Naruto still have chosen the path that he has? Probably not. She thought. Is that why she was here then? She was starting to think that Naruto was more special than she previously thought. He came from a powerful clan who was also related to the Senju, another powerful, if not the most powerful, clan that the world has seen. He was also the Jinchuriki of the strongest Biju, and possessed the Rinnegan. Yes, it was the last one that had her thinking all of this. The Rinnegan, just what exactly is Naruto meant to do? She honestly couldn't wait to see for herself. Both Naruto and Kushina stopped in front of a worn-down house with the Uzumaki clan symbol on it on the edge of the village. Heh, interesting. After having sneaked throughout the whole village, the two Uzumakis had finally arrived. Kushina frowned as she looked at the structure. This was one of Mito-sama's private buildings, she stated. She then glanced at Naruto's calculating look. Aren't you wondering why you were never told of this? Naruto shrugged. I was immature, he answered, so no, I'm not. It's the same with Yondaime. Even though she knew that she should not ask him, she did anyway. Then why did you dash? Because of what he did, he answered before he started to walk towards the entrance of the building. Kushina looked at his retreating form and followed. Naruto stopped in front of the steps of the door that seemed as if it could collapse at any moment. Where is it? He wondered as he looked around. You know, you haven't told me just what exactly we're looking for, said Kushina as she stood next to him. Before he could respond, something caught Naruto's attention on the doorway. As he analyzed it more closely, realization appeared on his face. So I was right. He walked up the few steps before arriving right in front of the small swirl on the doorway that was the same as the one that had been on the caves inside the Shodai's face on the Hokage monument. As he kneeled to examine it, he took notice of the fact that Kushina was kneeling next to him as well. This is... Naruto nodded. Yes. It was on the scroll that Niji gave me. Danzo figured it was some sort of seal, but was never able to figure out how it worked, so he gave up. But if this is the same as the one that was inside the cave of the Shodai's face on the Hokage monument. Kushina nodded. You do it then, she said. Naruto bit his thumb as if he was going to do a summoning jutsu and smeared the exposed blood on the swirl. It glowed, making both Naruto and Kushina jump back. A puff of smoke appeared just like when someone used a summoning or the shadow clone jutsu. Well, it seems as if it was the right decision to trust in you after all, Uzumaki Naruto. Both Naruto and Kushina narrowed their eyes as the smoke cleared. Once it did, their eyes widened as a red-headed woman with a diamond on her forehead wearing an elaborate kimono in her early 20s became visible. Who are you? Asked Naruto. The redhead smirked in response. Why, I'm Uzumaki Mito. Shock. Bewilderment. Confusion. Those three adjectives could very well describe how both Naruto and Kushina felt about the latest turn of events. But if any of you know, and all of you probably do know, about what the latest event was, well, I'm sure you can say that you can agree that they have every right to be confused as hell at the moment. Mito for her part stood there watching the shocked faces of her relatives with unmasked amusement. There was also a twinkle in her eye as she continued to stare at both Naruto and Kushina. Oi, brat, how long are you and your mother just going to stand there like dumbass? Not that you aren't one to begin with. Naruto came out of his shock thanks to Kurama's obvious observation. Aren't you one bit surprised right now? Asked Naruto in his bijou. Kurama snorted. Of course I'm not. This is Mito we're talking about. I may not like her or have talked to her a lot before, but just from meeting her once you can tell she's both devious and resourceful. So no, I'm not surprised. Well, apparently one being present was taking this casually. How long are you going to stare at me like I'm some sort of divine being or some other thing of the sort? Asked Mito, amusement clearly present in her voice. Kushina shook her head. Mito-sama, she began with an unsure tone in her voice, is that really you? Mito nodded. Yes, it is me, she responded. But how come you look so young then? Questioned Kushina further with a frown. The last time I saw you, you were nearly in your hundreds. Mito chuckled. Oh yes, I suppose that would be your first question, and the answer to that, my dear, is very simple. A small smirk appeared on her face. The wonders of Fuinjutsu. That put an even bigger frown on Kushina's face. Seals, she said unsurely. I find it really hard to believe that seals could have done all of this. Mito sighed. I suppose you would. After all, Fuinjutsu is such a complicated art, even if you're an Uzumaki. But then her face became dead serious. But it's the truth. Thanks to my studies in Fuinjutsu, I managed to implant part of my soul in a seal with all knowledge of what I knew into it as well. That sounds a lot like Orochimaru's curse mark, thought Naruto as he listened intently. Mito continued. Of course, I would still need a body or else my soul would simply disappear the moment that it got out of the seal. Human souls aren't like that of a bijou after all. They're more delicate. That's where you come in, she said, referring to Naruto. My blood, stated Naruto. Mito nodded as a smile appeared on her face. Correct. Thanks to your Uzumaki genes contained in your blood, I was able to duplicate my body. Of course, I wasn't going to make my body come out as that of an old hag. What use would I be then if simply for information? Not to mention that I also want a piece of what's to come. Wait a moment, said Naruto, I'm not completely Uzumaki. I know that, responded Mito in a bored tone, but you were the only one who would be able to do all that you're doing. I made it so that the seal would only take the necessary parts of your blood that contain the necessary components to remake my entire DNA. Once the basic components were done, the more complicated ones were done by my own cells and DNA. So I was basically reborn in a way. Also, I didn't know that Kushina would be part in this. That brought another frown in said redhead's face. That reminds me. Why didn't you dash? Mito raised up her right arm. I know what you're going to ask, and I'm unfortunately not going to be able to answer you. Well, completely at least. And why is that? Asked Kushina, clearly displeased at that. Mito sighed as she lowered her arm. Answer me this first. If I would have told you about what Konoha did to our clan, would you have still fallen in love with Minato? Answer honestly, Kushina, she said seriously. Kushina frowned again. Well, no, I wouldn't have, but what does that have to do with Dash? Everything, interrupted Mito. That you would not have fallen in love with Minato was reason enough for me to not include you. What are you talking about? Asked Kushina. Why is falling in love with Minato so important? Mito merely turned to Naruto. Because if you would have not, then Naruto here would not have been born. Which means that all of this would have been impossible. Of course, thought Kurama. So Madara told her, huh? Heh, so she concluded that telling Kushina was more of a disadvantage than an advantage. You've always been devious, Mito. Kushina became confused at that. Of course, she loved her son, but then again that was because he's her son. But if she would have known about her clan's betrayal, then being with Minato would have been one of her last things to do, even though he saved her life. Hello, anyone from Konoha, period. But why was her having Naruto so important? While I'm grateful for at least letting me be born, spoke up Naruto, causing Mito to look at him, I don't really see why you chose me. Mito smirked. Of course you wouldn't, well not yet. But there will be a time when you will realize just how important you are in the big hand of destiny, Naruto. Naruto merely looked at his newly revived relative with a calculating look. This was not the first time that someone said something like that to him. The Shinigami did, all the Bijou did, Obito did, and now so did Mito. He knew he would change the world considering what he was planning and the power he possessed, but that was all because of hard work and the circumstances that he found himself in. It wasn't like this was someone's big scheme and he was the grand puppet, right? At this point, Naruto was beginning to question if that was possible. And that brought a displeased look on his face. He wasn't some puppet for someone's plan. He had gotten enough of that from Konoha. You're misunderstanding me, said Mito as if she could read all the thoughts that were going through his mind. You're not some tool for someone. The reason you are here is because you chose to be here. You chose this path. Were there many more? Yes, but this is the one that you're walking. What I am saying though is that your choices have a big impact. What those impacts are, well that's for you to find out. And why won't you simply tell me, asked Naruto. Mito scoffed at that. Because if I did then that would be the easy way, and that's not the path you want to go. When you gain something because you put so much effort into it, it feels so much sweeter and grand once you obtain it. You won't take it for granted. That's the reason why I didn't put many things in my note to you. Why I purposely left out that I had done this and many other things. If you were given everything on a silver platter, you would have surely failed. But because of you actually doing things and gaining things because you've actually earned them, you are actually strong and capable to succeed. She's right, and you know it. Being handed everything to you without you putting any effort is more of a hindrance than it is a blessing. Yeah, you're right, thought Naruto. I see you understand, noted Mito. Good. I guess I kind of understand why you did what you did, said Kushina, but that doesn't mean I like it. But what happens now? Mito shrugged. That is not up to me. You are the ones that have the plan on how to eradicate Konoha. Yes we do, agreed Naruto. But will you follow us? Mito chuckled. Of course I will. You don't even have to ask me that. That's something that's kind of been troubling me, said Kushina. I mean, the Shodai was your husband and this village is his greatest legacy. Mito sighed sadly. I know that, she admitted softly, that was the one thing that caused me to have doubts as to if I should help Madara or not. But this is not his legacy anymore. Sandaime and the others destroyed Hashiramu's dream. If he would look and see what his village has become, he would be ashamed. Of course, he wouldn't do what we're doing. He wasn't like that, she said with a fond smile, and that's one of the things that made me fall in love with him. But then the smile disappeared. Unfortunately, I don't share that trait, and as much as it might make me feel like I'm betraying Hashirama, the anger at the fact that my entire clan was betrayed the way they were is much stronger. Mito then looked at Naruto. I know for a fact that you possess the jutsu to be able to summon the Shinigami without it taking out your soul in return, she stated. It would explain how Kushina is here. But I ask you to not revive my husband or his brother. They have nothing to do with this. Naruto nodded. It wasn't like he was planning on doing that in the first place. Both the Shodai and Nidaime have simply nothing to do with what happened with the Uzumaki clan. It would be stupid if he hated them for that when they clearly didn't know what happened. They were both dead by that Sandaime though, he was a different story. Thank you, said Mito with a bow. Well then, said Kushina, what now Naruto-kun? Mito raised an eyebrow on the suffix but didn't comment. A thought came to the blonde at that point. He brought out the Shodai necklace that he had won from Tsunade, which caused Mito's eyes to widen when she saw it. That's Hashirama's necklace, she said in surprise, but why do you have it? He gave it to our granddaughter, Tsunade. Naruto chuckled as he recalled how he had acquired the said necklace from said woman. She made a bet with me with the necklace on the line, and as you can see, she lost. Mito's eyebrows twitched. So she bet a priceless possession? Is that what you're telling me? Naruto nodded. Yep. And lost it. That little. Said Mito with a comical murderous look on her face. If you want the necklace, you can have it. He was your husband after all, said Naruto. Mito shook her head as she calmed down. No, keep it. Hashiramu gave it to Tsunade, and since you've apparently won it from her, it belongs to you now. Naruto nodded and put the necklace back on. When I see that little brat, I'm going to, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll do something all right, stated Mito. Kushina chuckled. Don't worry. I'm sure you'll get your shot at straightening her out. Oh, said Mito with a curious look. And why is that? Kushina shrugged. Because she's the Godame Hokage. As soon as that phrase left Kushina's mouth, Mito's face took the same expression that both Naruto and Kushina had a few moments before when Mito had first appeared. This caused both Naruto and Kushina to look amused just as Mito had. Are you kidding me? Asked Mito. Kushina shook her head. Nope. I'm being completely honest. Damn it, Madara, she muttered, the bastard could have told me that this was going to happen. Well, you know now, said Naruto with a shrug. I suppose so, said Mito with a shrug before a devious smile began to appear on her face. I guess it's time for me to give my granddaughter a visit after all these years. Yagura sighed quietly as he watched Utakata tend to Hataru's wounds. He then took the now cooked fish that they had caught the night before away from the fire that they had lighted the night before as well. How's she doing? He asked Utakata. Better, answered the rogue ninja. It was at that time that Hataru's eyes opened. As soon as they spotted Utakata, she quickly stood up in a sitting position and embraced him again. Only this time Utakata did take notice of the fact that a pair of huge breasts were currently being pressed against his chest. Sensei, exclaimed Hataru. I'm so glad that it wasn't some dream. You're really here. Utakata sighed as a small blush appeared on his cheeks. Yes, I am. Yagura merely shook his head and proceeded to eat his fish as Utakata began to explain to his student about what she was a part of now. Said girl embraced him the whole time, causing the blush on Utakata's cheek to increase as time went on. Yagura chuckled internally. Oh yes, he thought, this is going to be fun. Karen slowly opened her eyes. As soon as she did, she immediately closed them, the morning sun being responsible for that. The next thing she noticed was the fact that her pelvis area was sore. From what, she didn't know. Maybe she slept the wrong way the previous time. She then stood up in a sitting position on her sleeping bag and stretched. As she did so, two more facts came apparent to her. The first was that she was naked. The second was that she was in a tent. But the only thing that had a tent was. Her eyes widened as a massive blush appeared on her face. Oi Sasuke, said Suigetsu as he entered, I don't have any more toothpaste, so can you? He stopped speaking as he came face to face with a red-faced Karen whose top body was exposed thanks to the stretching from before. There, Suigetsu saw his first pair of real-life breasts. Karen did the only thing that a rational woman would do at this point. She screamed. Hard. Rashi shook his head as he heard the commotion from below. Currently we find both Rashi and Han sitting on separate tree branches that stood facing each other, both enjoying the fresh morning beauty. Well, they were, until the commotion that was happening below them began. Rashi shook those thoughts away as he glanced at the usual quiet and reserved Han as he stared at the sky. "Oi, Han," said Rashi. Said Shinobi, sparing him a glance was the only indication that he had heard him. But Rashi was used to it. He had worked with Han in the past when they had been IWA Shinobi. "Let me ask you something," began Rashi. Silence was the response, so he continued. "Just why exactly were you so easy to follow that boy anyways?" That had been something that had been bothering Rashi ever since it had occurred. Han wasn't one to be convoked so easily, if he could be convinced at all. But that he accepted Naruto's offer so fast like that? Well, it was quite a surprise. Han didn't respond for a few minutes. Rashi was beginning to think that Han wouldn't respond at all when the Jinchuriki of the Gobi spoke. "Just what do we have to go back to?" he said softly. That caught Rashi off guard. Of course, that was one of the reasons why he had himself accepted. So Han felt the same way, huh? "I have nothing," continued Han, "not to mention that the person I followed and was ready to give my life to in order to protect threw me away like some useless tool." Han shook his head. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said, "I feel that following him will be more beneficial than the Tsuchikage. That is all." That was the most that Rashi had heard Han say at once in all the time that he had known him. But he had to agree that Han had a point. Following the blonde was definitely better than the Tsuchikage. Rashi began to look up at the sky just like Han. "Yes, I definitely have nothing to lose," he thought. "After all, I too have nothing." Fu collapsed on the bed in her small room in the underground base. Today's training had been rough. She didn't know if it was morning or afternoon or what. She was underground after all. "That bastard," she thought, referring to Danzo, "all he made me do is call on your chakra. Of course. I'm the whole reason he wants you in the first place. Nothing more." Fu rolled her eyes. "Thanks for the confidence boost." Chomei scoffed. "Whatever. The reason that the training had been hard was because her body was not used to using Komiai's chakra for a long period of time. After all, Chomei had only given it to her when her life was in danger, and that was it. So she could say that this was beneficiary for her as well. But the thought that the only reason that she was wanted was because of what she contained inside her made her blood boil in anger. "I agree with you on that, human." Fu sighed. "Just what is your problem with me anyways? I haven't done a single bad thing to you." Chomei scoffed again. "You really want to know? Fine, I'll tell you. I don't merely just dislike you. I dislike your entire species." "Including Naruto?" Chomei paused. "No, well, not completely. He might be the second human that I don't despise. I have yet to see. Well, I haven't done anything wrong to you. So I don't see why you don't like me. You don't get it, do you? Do you realize how long I have been sealed away, time after time by your species simply because they want my power? That right there is the very reason why I despise humans." "I see, well then you have every right to feel the way you do. But you're also forgotten that in the same way that you have been used, I have been and currently am." That caused Chomei to stop and contemplate his host's words. After a few moments, he spoke. "Yes, I suppose that is something that we do share." "Exactly. And that's also the very reason why you and I should not be fighting with each other. You want to despise the rest of my race that isn't a Jinchuriki? Go ahead, but remember that both Jinchurikis and Bijus have that bond of suffering that connects us. I suppose that's why Naruto and Kyuubi get along." Chomei was surprised to hear that. "Do you know of their relationship?" Fu giggled quietly, the only sound in the otherwise silent room. "You know that sounds weird, but yes, Naruto told me how he and Kyuubi are friends. To be honest, that made me jealous. Want to know why? Because I wish that I could have the same thing with you and call you my friend." "You, Want to be my friend? Of course. Like I said, we share a bond of suffering. And it's because of that we can relate to each other and in the process become friends. Chomei was silent. He didn't know what to say. He was too shocked to say anything. A human wanted to become his friends, that's something that he never thought would happen. What was this feeling? Excitement perhaps. He didn't know, but he honestly didn't care. I suppose we could. Fu smiled. Good. Now I have to rest. I'm quite tired from using your chakra. Night Nanabai. Wait. Call me Chomei. That's my real name. Fu's smile became bigger. Alright. Good night, Komiai-chan. Chomei snarled. I'm not a chan. And it's not even nighttime. Fu simply laughed. I never thought that I would say this, but, welcome to Konoha Kabuto. Kabuto chuckled at Tsunade's disgusted face when she said that. That's cruel, you know. Whatever, said Tsunade with a wave of her hand, we now need to concentrate on how to prepare ourselves for this war. Before Kabuto could speak, Shizun entered the office. Tsunade-sama she stopped as she immediately saw Kabuto standing in front of Tsunade's desk with a "what the fuck" look on her face. Kabuto for his part merely waved eagerly at Tsunade's assistant. Before Shizun could react, Tsunade spoke. Before you do anything stupid, yes, I know that Kabuto, who was Orochimaru's right-hand man, is standing in my office and is waving at you like a moron. Kabuto stopped his actions when he heard that. Now, what is it that you need to tell me? Even though she had many questions that she wanted to ask, Shizun trusted her master, so she answered. Well, the council is merely wondering if you are going to respond to the Kazekage's request for a Kage meeting. Oh, said Kabuto as he readjusted his glasses. Not that is most interesting. And this provides us with a perfect opportunity. Is Suna allied with Naruto? Asked Tsunade to Kabuto. Kabuto shook his head. No. As far as I know, Naruto hasn't stepped foot in that village. I see. Muttered Tsunade, relieved. Well, what will you do, Tsunade-sama? Asked Shizun. If the other Kages accept, so will I, stated Tsunade. After all, like Kabuto said, this provides us with a perfect opportunity. The other Kages will not surely agree, said Kabuto. This will also be a perfect chance for Naruto to take you out and leave Konoha without a leader. And without a leader, there is chaos. I suggest you readied your army before then. Tsunade nodded. Yes. I see your point. Well, Shizun, you know what to tell them. Shizun nodded and walked out of the office. I must say that you're getting over Jiraiya's death pretty quickly, commented Kabuto. Tsunade sighed. Of course he would know, she thought. I'm not completely over it yet, she answered honestly, but this is no time for mourning. I can do all that when this whole mess is over. I see. Said Kabuto. Before the conversation could go any further, however, Shizun barged into the office, painting a troubled look on her face. Fuck. Thought Tsunade, already knowing what that look meant. It meant some messed up shit was going to happen. Even she would take that bet. I see. Yeah. So what are we going to do then? Mikoto sighed. I don't think there's anything to do without revealing ourselves unless Tsunade kills him. I think that Tsunade could very well know about our existence at this point, so that's a moot point. And who knows what else Orochimaru knew? Mikoto had to agree that Obito was right. Orochimaru, that bastard, was simply too cunning for his own good. Even though he was already dead, he still fucked up things in some fashion. I'll inform Naruto of this, she said. Since he's there, he'll decide what to do. I see. Then what am I supposed to do now? Lay low, responded Mikoto. Do not attract any attention to yourself, you got that? Yeah, hey, wait a minute, why don't you say the same to Zetsu? Mikoto sighed. Isn't it obvious? He's not an idiot like you. I take offense to that, you know. Mikoto shrugged. It's the truth. I'll contact you when there's something to be done. Yeah, I'm out then. Obito's hologram form disappeared and Mikoto pocketed the disc away. So are we ready to go? Asked Yujito as she and B came walking behind her. Mikoto nodded. Yes. To Kumo it is. The message should have arrived to the other Kages by now, stated Temari as she, Gaara, and Kankuro walked through the sand of the desert that led to Suna. Gaara nodded. Yes. Now all we have to do is wait for a response. They'll have no choice but to respond, said Kankuro. After all, it would look bad if the other Kages showed up and you didn't. They must all be thinking that right now. Wow, said Temari with wide eyes, you actually said something smart for once. Is this a dream, or are you an imposter that is impersonating Kankuro to get secrets from Suna so me and Gaara should kill you right now? But then again, why would anyone want to impersonate Kankuro of all people? Shut up, Temari, said Kankuro with a twitching eyebrow. Gaara's lips twitched upward as when someone were to smirk, but fought the urge back. Hey, he had an image to uphold. Any further conversation ended as a squad of Suna shinobi appeared running towards them. Gaara-sama, said the Jonin in the front, meaning he was most likely the leader. What is it? Asked Gaara as the Jonin and the rest of the squad stopped in front of him. We just received news from our spy network of something tremendous that has happened in AIM. AIM, thought Gaara. That village was really isolated and impossible to get any spies into thanks to Hanzo. But now apparently they can somehow know what has happened there. Either it was some sort of trick by AIM or something disastrous has happened. And why did he think that Naruto could be involved? Konoha, sure has changed. Muttered Mito as she gazed at it from on top of Shodai's face on the Hokage monument. I think we have a situation, said Kushina as she pointed to all the entrance gates to enter the village. All three Uzumaki could see fighting taking place. What was going on? It seems someone has beaten us to the punch, commented Mito. Naruto smirked. Well, we can't have that. I suppose we have to show whoever is doing this that they have made a mistake. Both Kushina and Mito chuckled as they stood at both of his sides. Mito glanced at Naruto. It seems I get to see what you're capable of, Uzumaki Naruto. Show me how powerful you are thanks to the path that you have chosen. Naruto's Rinnegan activated. Let's go.